This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Pasterson and Michael Remis.
Back to
here. Restart the show. I had you on mute. That was a mute from last time. They never heard it. So let's.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Happy Tuesday. Great to be back in the host chair. Andrew Pasterson, Michael Remis with you with another big episode of Winnipeg Sports Talk. And for the first time this year, we've actually got to talk about a loss for the Winnipeg Jets. 8-1 now after dropping a 6-4 decision to the Toronto Maple Leafs last night. A pretty ugly first period. Next thing you know, the Winnipeg Jets were down. They did battle back. The power play still keeps on rolling. The PK was good. But when you spot a team four, it's a long road back. And they weren't able to come all the way back, but it was an exciting finish. Great atmosphere at the building last night. 5-4 late, and then an empty netter for the John Tavares hat trick iced it for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So the Jets are 8-1. We'll hear from Coach Scott Arniel as well as Josh Morrissey coming up in a few minutes, and pick this one apart. Murat is going to join us. Always love having Murat on the program. We'll get his thoughts on last night. A look ahead to a quick 2-game road trip out to Detroit and Columbus for the Winnipeg Jets before they come back home for a more extended homestand as opposed to the one-gamer that they just had yesterday. Of course, I didn't get a chance to be on the program yesterday to talk about the Bombers on the weekend. I cannot wait to talk to Derek Taylor. He will join us today at 2:30. As I tweeted out, we were hoping to be able to see the game in Vegas. So we were out at a couple sports books, but with a million college football games on at the time. And I think there's probably an issue with the two being on CTV and not normally, TSN, the sports channel. We weren't able to see it. And because we were walking around, I just put the buds in and listened to DT and Doug, who did just an amazing job of calling that game, especially the fourth quarter. So we'll talk about that, take a look ahead to the playoffs this weekend in the Canadian Football League. And then tomorrow, Jeff Hamilton and I will have a big edition of CFL 110. But we will talk Bombers a little bit later on. And actually, this is a perfect time, coming out of a Jets-Leafs game last night, to welcome on John Matisz, who has a piece in The Score, one reason for optimism and one reason for pessimism for all of Canada's NHL teams. So we'll get his takes on the Jets. Obviously, last night's game, we saw from the Toronto Maple Leafs as well, before Murat joins us, sort of middle of the program. Going to be a great one today. Huge thanks to all of our sponsors that make the show happen each and every day. Of course, our friends at Princess Auto. Coolbet, big night tonight, we'll tell you about in just a second. Garage Living Winnipeg, Rollies Transfer, Consolidated Supply, Manitoba Battery, fansfirst.ca. I think the site was pretty busy for last night's game, as it usually is when the Toronto Maple Leafs come to town. Canadian Club, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, Little Brown Jug, the Winnipeg Jets, Royal Sports, and our friends at Boston Pizza. Speaking of Boston Pizza, tomorrow night is our Winnipeg Jets, Winnipeg Sports Talk watch party. Boston Pizza Polo Park, 6:30 p.m. Would suggest you get there early to make sure you got a good spot for the game. If you are bringing a bigger group, feel free to give a call to Boston Pizza Polo Park and reserve a table and get there early. Remo, myself, Connor, Liz, the whole crew will be down there. And of course, our friends at Little Brown Jug, now on tap at select Boston pizzas, including BP Polo Park. So we'll be able to have a few 1919s. We've got some prizing from Little Brown Jug. And of course, all the great stuff that Boston Pizza does at every Boston Pizza for Winnipeg Jet games. So we move on at 8-1. Look to go 9-1 tomorrow against our old pal Andrew Kopp and the Detroit Red Wings. Hope you can join us at Boston Pizza Polo Park for that. And I'll get to this a little bit more later on. But tonight is also our third Lock Shop Poker Series with Coolbet, Edmonton Sports Talk, and Winnipeg Sports Talk. If you want to throw down against myself, Remis, Dustin Nielsen, Matt Awanek, and the crew, what you're going to want to do is head over to coolbet.com, click on poker, download the poker app, and then click on tourneys. There's a little magnifying glass where you can just put in lock. It'll pop up, register. It's a €20, so basically $30 entry. And I right now have the belt amongst the WST and EST contingent as the last man standing. Remis, of course, famously finished second in the first one. So he's ready to go, I know, and we should be too. So yeah, if you do like playing some online poker, join us tonight for that. Coolbet.com, click on poker, download the app is the best way to do it. The platform is awesome, and get in on that. All right, let's welcome in the guy, Michael Remis. Remo, thanks again for holding it down for a couple days. And this is sort of weird. We haven't done a show together for the better part of about a week and a half, because as soon as you got back, I ditched to Vegas for a couple weekends. By the way, shout out to everyone. Got a lot of nice words from Winnipeg Sports Talk viewers on the plane, both there and particularly on the way back. There was a lot of people interested in the game last night, which finished just as we were getting on board last night. So that was fun, but I was kind of hoping we'd come back and be able to be talking about 9-0. But I'll tell you what, watching that first period, when I got in the cab on the way to the airport, I did not have a lot of optimism that things would turn around. They, in fact, did. But as I mentioned right off the bat, you spot a team elite like the Jets did to Toronto last night. Not a winning formula. And I think at the end, when you consider the way the game went, the deserving team got the 2 points.
Yeah, it was a really nice third period from the Jets, but just like this show started out with a mute, the Jets also started out with one. We were just trying to mimic what was on the ice last night. Not the strongest start from the Jets. The pucks, they couldn't get it out of their end, ended up in the back of their net over and over. And, you knew they were going to lose the game at some point. Unfortunate that it has to be against the Toronto Maple Leafs at home with so many Leaf fans. So disappointing, results. I think you like the pushback there in the third period. You like the way the power play is going and generating chances, but you'd like to see a little more from 5-on-5. First really bad game all season. Huss, they won 8 in a row. Brush it off. We'll see how they are on Wednesday in Detroit with Connor Hellebuyck, playing in his home state. I think we'll see a nice bounce back game then. I just think the worst, if it wasn't against the Leafs, Huss,
Listen,
I think people wouldn't be as upset.
Of course the team's going to lose at some point. They'd be able to handle it a lot better. That was the sentiment in the airport. Shout out to one of the, speaking of trivia, the trivia kings of our events at Little Brown Jug, the sports rabbis, were on the flight. And basically said as much, hey, listen, I can totally handle the loss, but just not this game. It did seem, though, what I got to see of the third period, shout out to one of those individuals that had a VPN, so we were able to get it on the phone. It did seem like it, obviously started terrible for the home team, and I'm sure the Leafs fans were all riled up, but an electric atmosphere in the third period, especially after the Jets started going. And I guess originally they had credited Kyle Connor with a hat trick, but that got changed. So he ended up with 2 goals and I believe 4 points on the night. But honestly, I mean, just a really tough start. Now, all games are not going to be perfect. And, this team had done a very, very good job of finding a way to win. I couldn't believe, Remis, when we were, I mean, obviously the team was 8-0. So, the record was great. But when they gave up the first goal, they threw up the broadcast. The Jets, when allowing the first goal, were 6-0 on the season. They didn't just allow the first one; they gave the first 4, and yet still battled back. So, I guess you like that. But I know, as we'll hear from Scott Arniel, you want your team to be ready to meet that challenge right out of the gate, and it certainly didn't seem like the Jets were ready for what was coming. And that first period was just all Toronto, and they, deservingly built up the lead that ended up being so impactful in the game.
Yeah, and they just didn't come out at the start. You're turning the puck over to William Nylander in the slot. He's going to put it in the back of the net. I think one of them, some miscommunication between Pionk and Samberg. And Pionk and Samberg, that pairing had been very good throughout the season. Was not their night last night. I think it was -5 for that pair. And Scott Arniel shuffling the lines in D pairs. There was one other one. Oh, yeah, like Niederreiter goes to block a shot, goes like off his skate right back to them. The Leafs in defense just wasn't. They just didn't have it there in their own end in the first period, and it cost them. When you spot a team 4-0 lead, it's tough to can't come back. They tried very, very hard, and the power play, I mean, looks as good as it looks in years. It's number 1 in the NHL, and you saw it yesterday. The cross-seam passes, Kyle Connor with the one-timer, Kyle Connor with just grabbing it and shooting it quickly without stick handling. Very, very impressive that he had 2 goals, 2 assists. He had a hat trick. But they took it away from him after the game, gave that one to Gabe Vilardi, who had a goal and assist of his own. Mark Scheifele, also goal and assist too. Josh Morrissey, 3 points. He is third among defensemen scoring now in the NHL. Pietrangelo keeping pace with him in their late game. But there's some stuff to like on the power play. But overall, the game is mostly played a 5-on-5, and it just wasn't there last night.
Yeah, so the team moves on, and listen, no time to dwell on it. You just have to learn the lesson that that you got, and that is 60 minutes. Listen, they have been so good at coming back from being down, as we mentioned, that crazy number of 6-0 after allowing the first goal, and it happened again on Saturday against the Calgary Flames. In the game that the Winnipeg Jets came back to win. And I think, a big opportunity. And I think these next couple games, Remis, are really important for Winnipeg. Because, you have your first taste of defeat. You're still in a great spot, first overall and first in the division, ahead of the likes of Dallas, who's had a great start as well, and Minnesota, who's in Pittsburgh tonight, and Marc-Andre Fleury's final stop in Pittsburgh. But I mean, when you look at this team and what's to come, you've got the Detroit Red Wings, who have had a very middle-of-the-road start. I mean, I think it was Wenberg that said, going into last night, Buffalo, Boston, Montreal, Detroit, and Toronto in that division were all 4-4-1, and Ottawa was 4-4. So, I mean, basically a dead heat from all of there. But you move on, Detroit on Wednesday, and then the Columbus Blue Jackets, who have surprised some teams this year, and they absolutely whooped the Oilers last night. The Blue Jackets actually have a winning record. They're 4-3-1, playing with heavy hearts after the tragedy of Johnny Gaudreau. But, I mean, if you can get those wins, it does set you up in a pretty good spot, because that following week, you got some heavy hitters coming in. It starts off with the Tampa Bay Lightning on Sunday, then Utah on Tuesday, followed up by Colorado in their first matchup since what happened in the playoffs last year, and then the Saturday game against the Dallas Stars, now moved to 2 p.m. as part of what will be an incredible sports day here in Winnipeg, with the Bombers playing after the Jets at Princess Auto Stadium for a trip to the Grey Cup. So I got to tell you, I mean, you do have to move on, and we'll hear from the coach in a minute. But then got to get back on the horse and hopefully have a couple of good results over this next bit, because that is one heck of a tough week at home with some big games and high leverage games in the division with Utah, Colorado, and Dallas coming to town.
Yeah, Utah, crazy game last night, Huss. They had a 4-1 lead against San Jose, and late in the third, San Jose came back, tied a 4-4. And ended up winning that one. I think Utah's got some problems with defense. Colorado, injuries. Ross Colton, now he's out, injured last night's game. And then the week after, it doesn't really get much easier on the road to the Rangers, Lightning, and defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers. And then a home with Florida Panthers for the WST night game in November. So then, look, Josh Morrissey said it after, they weren't going to be the first team to go 82-0, or it was disappointing that they're not. I forget exactly what he said, but he joked about that. And, move on, and hopefully you can get 2 points in Detroit. And Columbus, I'm interested to see them because, they've certainly surprised this season.
Well, it was funny, and I know Jake's in the chat taking a bit of a victory lap from the Toronto side of things, but Patty and I were doing the lock shop, and he said, Huss, when was the last time one of your teams lost a game? And I said, well, a few weeks ago, the Bombers lost to Toronto. But other than that, it's been a long time. I mean, the Chiefs are still undefeated. They haven't lost since Christmas of last year. The Jets, of course, were 8-0. And the Bombers just have the one blemish over the course of the second half of the CFL season. So they're living a little bit of a charmed life. It was a little taste of reality last night. But still, lots to look forward to this week, and move on from a tough one at home against a Leaf team that was pretty hungry for a victory after losing to Columbus and St. Louis and Boston in OT in their last 3 outings. Let's hear from the coach, Scott Arniel, who for the first time as the permanent official head coach of the Jets had to meet the media talking about a loss. Here's what Arniel had to say about last night's game.
It was throughout, whether it was just our ready to go, ready to compete, ready to get into it. Don't have an answer for it. Toronto was a heck of a lot better than we were. They wanted it, and they came in here and gave us a punch right in the nose the first 2 periods. A little late when we responded. Just not good enough. Didn't come out the way we've come out.
Sure. Obviously, a loss was going to come at some point. What do you look for in terms of the response now when you get ready for Wednesday?
Yeah, we'll move off it. We'll look at it as coaches, and we'll talk about it. But, you move on to your next game. We got to go to Detroit and go back out on the road again and start over. It's like we've talked about. Whether it was a win or a loss, you got to move on to the next one. We still got 73 to go. There's still a lot of hockey to go here. So learn from this and move on.
All right, so there's Scott Arniel just on thoughts on the overall game last night. The Jets did turn it on later on. But when you dig yourself a hole the way that they did, it takes a lot to get back in the game. They did, but it wasn't enough. But Arniel was asked about what was his message to the team after 2 periods.
Well, I just told him we had 20 minutes to go, third period to go. We had two scoring chances, 5-on-5. That's what we ended up with, 2 scoring chances. So just wanted us to go out, have a third period where we go out and work, go out and go after them, change the lines up because I had to try something. And at the end of the day, we spent some more time in there in the rink. All our goals came off of specialty team situations, 6-on-5, whatever. So we didn't get inside enough. That was probably the biggest answer.
All right, so not pleased with the 5-on-5 play. And here's one other one from Arniel. This is his response when asked about the top line giving up too many goals against.
I'm not going to start explaining what line does what against the opposition because I can go back to the 8 games before, and I still think there's a lot of good hockey that's been played by those 3 guys. So there wasn't anybody that was good tonight for 2 periods. Toronto came out and took the game from us. They came in here and they played a lot harder and won a lot more battles than we did.
Yeah, pretty simple. If a team's going at a higher level than you are and they're winning all the battles, you're not winning. And that's what happened last night with the Winnipeg Jets. Josh Morrissey, as Remis mentioned, had a another big, offensive night. He spoke afterwards after a disappointing first loss of the season and just talked about, his views on last night's game against the Leafs.
Yeah, obviously, we were hopeful to go 82-0, but that's never been done. It was a tough game for us. Obviously, got behind it, 4-0 there with almost 2 periods to play, and I felt like we did a good job of battling back, make it 4-2, started to get our legs going, and then obviously letting another one. And but we never quit throughout the night, and I think we were 8-0 for a reason, we're 8-1 for a reason. So, but that compete to battle back, and make it a game so that we could pull the goalie and see if we could try to tie it up. I think that's the character of our group, and we'll look at what we need to get better at, get some rest, and move on.
Probably the most frustrating thing, I'm sure, for the Jets, and certainly the fans that were supporting the home team last night, was the slow start. And again, it's one thing to give up the first goal. That happens. I mean, we saw kind of a weird one go in on Eric Comrie over his shoulder on Saturday. And the Jets quickly battled back. That didn't happen last night, and Morrissey was just asked his thoughts on the slow start.
All the things that happen when you have a slow start, don't move the puck well, not executing, our game plan with and without the puck. They're a fast team. They're, trying to find their footing, and obviously they got some very elite players. They just came out of Boston, so that's always a tough game, and perhaps I always find for your next one. So, they came out ready to go, and we weren't there. So we got to find a way to be, better to start coming off a road trip. Especially coming back from the West Coast. I've been in the league long enough that those sometimes first periods are not always the cleanest, but to find a way to be better, obviously, than we were there.
All right. Well, one positive that continues to be a huge development in the Jets game, and maybe the biggest reason why they have the gaudy record that they do, even after last night's loss, is special teams. Very strong game again from the PK, a perfect 2 for 2. But it was the power play that got the Jets back into the game. Josh talked about that push on the power play to make it a game.
I think just what we've been doing all year. I think there's a pace that we're playing at and executing at that we haven't had in the past. Obviously we're on the same page, and we're getting opportunities different ways off, from down low, up top, on the flanks and the slots. So, it was, like I said, we want it to be a strength of our team and something that can get us, back into games, can close games out or put a game out of reach. So tonight it got us back in that game, and like I said, gave us a chance to at least pull the goalie and make a game of it in the third.
Just mentioning that, Reem, I know we'll kind of finish this Detroit game and have our first 10-game segment, our old pal Rick Ralph's favorite. It is incredible at just how different this power play looks this year, and the success that they've had. I mean, I still remember Rick Bowness coming on with us after the season and saying, quite frankly, if the Jets power play had just been average last year, they probably win the President's Trophy. The difference in special teams right now, I think, to be honest, is the difference between a team that's 5-4 right now and 8-1. And last night, I think a perfect example, even when things weren't going well at 5-on-5 at all, you take a penalty against the Winnipeg Jets, and there's a good chance it's going to end up in the back of your net. You combine that with penalty killing, which is at a much higher level than it had been in the past. And that is something that even in a game like last night, where the Winnipeg Jets weren't very good and certainly were the second best team on the ice at 5-on-5, you can pull yourself out of a hole and you can flip a game, with strong, particularly power play work. And I mean, I don't know what we want to say about Kyle Connor. I mean, he has just been absolutely on fire so far this year and is proving himself right up there with the best goal scorers and most consistent goal scorers in the NHL.
Yeah, looking at the NHL power play rankings for this season, the Jets number 1, 44.4%, tied for the league lead in power play goals with Colorado and New Jersey, and they've done it in less opportunities. Those are some elite teams, and it was funny, the conversation leading into the game is how the Maple Leafs, they have all these great players like Matthews, Marner, Nylander, and their power play's been 10% since February of last year, and the Jets have a plan. They're moving the puck quicker. And, it's been nice to see, when Rick Bowness came in, he outlined a few things he wanted to improve. They improved in those areas. And this offseason was a focus for them. Special teams, got to get better there. They've certainly shown they've gotten better in the power play, because in the past, in a game like that, they'd have power play opportunity to try to get back into the game. And they wouldn't be able to enter the zone, or they wouldn't be able to generate chances. And even when they weren't scoring, the chances were there. Kyle Connor leading the team with 7 shots on net. And, shout out to the penalty kill as well. They were perfect last night, 2 for 2. And when you're scoring on the power play and going perfect on the penalty kill like they have for 6 times this season, not allowing a power play goal, you're going to win games. And, they're able to win those close games, get to overtime, and win in overtime as well. So, well done, 8-1. But Dylan DeMello said they haven't done crap yet. Isn't that what he said yesterday? That they're trying to still get better in every areas, and there's certainly some areas for improvement, and they'll take that and move on to the next one.
Yeah, listen, they need to get back and be a more effective team overall at 5-on-5, and you heard that from Scott Arniel. But man, special teams, a big plus for a team that was in a very opposite situation last year. All right, we're going to be talking more about this game, the Canadian NHL teams. We'll kind of dive into it from a straight-up Jets perspective with Murat as well in a few minutes. But John Matisz is going to jump on. We will get to the Bombers and what is it? Someone called the Montreal blow job. Obviously, that's a term that probably sometimes just something else. But the miracle of the wind on Saturday. A legendary game in Bomber history. Now, Derek Taylor's going to join us a little later on. Of course, tomorrow after the program, we will have another edition of CFL 110. It is brought to you by Garage Living Winnipeg. And, well, I'll tell you what, what do we have here? We've got maybe a couple weeks until the snow flies. But it is coming soon. And if you are thinking about getting that clean, organized garage before winter comes, you've still got time, but not much, to get in touch with Garage Living at 999-1234. Garage Living has an innovative solution to all that clutter in the garage, and it's called Slat Wall. Dozens of hooks, baskets, and shelves that clip into it to get everything off your floor, even a cool golf club caddy, and tire racks to store those winter or summer tires. And you can do as much of it or as little of it as you want to fit within your budget. Don't miss your chance to clear the clutter, organize and beautify your garage with Slat Wall, polyaspartic floor coating, made in Canada premium metal cabinetry for a total garage makeover. Check out their website and their amazing work at garageliving.com, and give our pal Pat Kanuga a buzz, 204-999-1234 to book a free in-garage consultation or make an appointment to meet him in their showroom at 981 Main Street. Garage Living Winnipeg. Garages made for living. A big thank you to our friends at Rolly's Transfer. Family owned and operated for over 60 years here in Manitoba as the most trusted name in moving. Listen, folks, we know how stressful a move can be. Well, take out as much of that stress as possible with the trusted white glove service from Rolly's on your next move. If you do have a move coming up, their logistics business takes them throughout the city and province on a daily basis, which means flexible routes, flexible timing, and great rates on your next move. And an even better rate for WST listeners. Go to their website. You can click on the top right, request an estimate, let them know when and where you're moving. what you're going to be moving, and make sure to put in the promo code WST for a special discount on moving services and moving supplies. They'll turn it around with a great quote for you and get you moving on to your next destination. For your next move, make it Rollies, the most trusted name in Manitoba for over 60 years. Find out more and request a quote today at rollies.com. I got to give a shout out to my pal Chris Buchler, owner of Consolidated Supply. Actually bumped into him in Vegas on the weekend. They were down for an event with some of their customers from out west and got a chance to hang out with him. Great supporters of ours for years. Of course, they are the lead. They do so much in the golf industry as the leaders in irrigation systems and solutions, but also have artificial turf, both new and used golf carts, is the exclusive club car dealer in Manitoba, and other great options for your property, including hot tubs and amazing outdoor kitchens. Of course, 12 months a year, they are the leaders in small engine parts and repair. Pop by and see them at their showroom, open to the public, 1395 Niagara Road East, or find out more online at cte.ca. And hey, well, it is going to be nice for maybe a couple more weeks. You know that that ain't going to last. Are you ready for winter? Your car, your truck, most importantly, your battery. We all know that Manitoba Battery is the local spot for the best in price and service on batteries for all makes and models. And you don't want to be on the side of the road calling a friend for a pickup. Make sure that you're good to go for winter. And all that's going to take is a trip down to either Logan Avenue, their new location on Dovercourt Drive. Manitoba Battery has the best prices on batteries in town, period, beating the pants off the big box stores, and the best service as well, as they'll deliver those batteries to you for free anywhere inside the perimeter with any purchase over $60. It's just that easy. Shop local, get the best price at Manitoba Battery. Ordered today at manitobabattery.com. All right, Murat coming up from a Jets focus in a little bit, but let's welcome in our pal John Matisz from The Score, who joins us now. John, what's going on? How are you?
Hustler, I'm well. How are you?
Well, I'm a little beat up. I got back late from Las Vegas last night, and I think Jet fans a little beat up because the 8-game winning streak is over, and of all teams, at the hands of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Electric atmosphere last night at Canada Life Centre, which usually happens when you've got such a split building. But it didn't seem the home team was up for the challenge early on. A really ugly first period. And, I mean, the Leafs looked like they were running away for it before the Jet power play pulled them back into the game and gave us a little bit of suspense in the third period. I mean, from your perspective, what did you make of last night's tilt here in the Peg?
I mean, yeah, it was kind of one of those games where one team was humming and one was not until the last, 10, 20 minutes of the game. And listen, it was bound to happen. This is a team that started 8-0. They weren't going to go 82-0. They weren't going to, I don't know, in those first 8 games, I mean, sure, not every period was great, but I don't think they laid an egg until the 9th game there. So bound to happen. It's almost like the San Jose Sharks. At some point, they win a game. That's the opposite. But I don't know. It was also interesting, too, to watch these two teams go head-to-head, because there always seems to be something weird that happens or something dramatic. And, I love even the dueling chants of go Jets go and go Leafs go. There's something magical about that. And, I don't know if you were in the building or watching on Amazon, but they sure seem to be turning up the volume on the crowd. Either that or the crowds have suddenly gotten a lot louder. But that was a nice wrinkle.
It's funny you bring that up because we had a great chat with Jody Shelley last week on the program, and he had mentioned, working on doing Columbus Blue Jackets games normally and working on a whole bunch of different broadcasts, that Amazon has some additional technology where they are miking up, the audio is just at a whole nother level than what we normally get for games. And when you add in a fired up building with Jet fans and Leaf fans there, the product really pops. So, I mean, I think that's something people are going to really enjoy as we get through all that. I mean, from a Leaf perspective, they really needed that game. I mean, you look back at the previous week and they had the ugly loss to Columbus and then coming home and getting whooped by Craig Berube's former team and then blowing that game late. I mean, my pals Pat and Jake from Coolbet from the Lock Shop, we were talking, and I mean, I don't think a lot of Leaf fans were very comfortable there in the final couple minutes of the game, clinging to that 1-goal lead, considering what had happened so far. But they get to breathe moving out of that one and, kind of get that important win, which kind of brings us to a piece you've got up at the Score right now from last week. And it kind of takes us around the Canadian teams with a reason for optimism and a reason for pessimism in each team. I'll start with Winnipeg for you. I mean, the optimism, I think, goes without saying. The 8-0 start. I'm not sure whether this is necessarily a reason for pessimism or maybe just caution because it is early. That being said, I mean, the points are in the standings. They've already been banked. It has been a great, great start for Winnipeg, and certainly they'd be at the top of the list, not just for the Canadian teams, for the league about coming out of the gate.
Yeah, I mean, you're nitpicking at this point with the Jets. Let me start with a positive. Like, one thing, I was looking at it before I came on, one thing that I'm really pleased about, if you will, about the Jets is that they've continued to play a style that matches Connor Hellebuck's strengths. And what I mean by that is, like, if you look at the Sport Logic data, so last year they were 7th in expected goals against, really good, top 10 team, 10th in inner slot shots against, obviously the fewest, like 10 is good, and then 12th in opposition O-zone possession. So those three stats, they're all kind of related, but it basically says they're keeping teams to the outside, they're allowing Connor Hellebuck to see these shots, and they're just not getting hemmed in their own zone too often. Okay, that was last year under Rick Bowness. Under Scott Arniel, now they're first in expected goals against. This is, I should also mention the stats from this year before last night's game, but first in expected goals against, top in the league. You can't get better than that. Second in inner slot shots against. Again, phenomenal. 7th in O-zone possession against. Another really strong stat. So, like, the defensive structure is there from coach to coach and, moving a couple bodies in and out. And it's just some teams you watch and you're like, they're not playing to the strengths of their core. But I think this is a great example, a case study of a team that's really identified a way to protect Connor Hellebuck. Because if he can see a shot and it's from the outside, I mean, there's not a goalie in the planet that's better at stopping those clean shots because he's so technically sound, so reliable. And he's not really super athletic, right? So there are some weaknesses when you get a little tighter in on him. So that's a huge plus, and it's something that I've been kind of monitoring and I looked up before I came on. Negatives, I mean, we can't ignore that it's been an easy schedule. Edmonton and Toronto are the only teams out of the 9 opponents so far that made the playoffs last year. They've got Detroit and Columbus coming up. Like, and that this isn't the Winnipeg's fault. It's just adding context to the situation where you go 8-1 out of the gate. You could go 10-1 out of the gate, and you're going to look fantastic on paper, but there's probably an inevitable lull coming up based on purely on your opponent. You could play great in the next 10 games after that, but you're probably going to lose more because the opponents are just that much better. Also, 3 OT wins. Anyone who knows anything about hockey knows that OTs can go any which way. Full credit to the Jets for getting those wins, but 1-goal games aren't super sustainable. They haven't had any back-to-backs either. So again, the schedule maker is on their side. And then another thing I'd point out is that they have the second highest shooting percentage right now. Listen, they have a lot of sharpshooters. Kyle Connor right at the top of that list. So they should naturally be fairly high, but second highest, that's a bit of a red flag. And then, again, I hate to be negative about an 8-1 team, and I'm not. These are more nitpicks, but they're 5-on-5 game. I mean, they're 8-1 with a record, but they're -2 at 5-on-5 in terms of goals for and against. So they're relying a little too much on the power play, and that's mostly actually saying that the first line is relying too much on power play production and not producing at 5-on-5.
Which is just wild because, John, I mean, the penalty kill and particularly the power play were the Achilles heel of this team last year. Mm-hmm. I mean, the special teams were not good. I mean, bottom 10 in the league. And it is somewhat of a revelation. We talked so much about special teams through the preseason and training camp, and we knew how much the Jets were working on it. And all of that is paying dividends right now in the season. So, I mean, that's been a huge part. But, to your point, they absolutely need to be getting on the right side of the ledger more at 5-on-5. And if they can do that and keep the power play humming the way that it is, they'll have a good chance at staying in the neighborhood that they are right now with the NHL's top teams. I guess we may as well quickly mention the Leafs here,
Sure.
who got that win and they needed it. I mean, what's been good and what has been not so good with Toronto's start?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I think Brad Treliving's looked pretty savvy given what he did in the offseason, whether it's bringing Craig Berube. He's had a good start to the season as far as his message getting across. Obviously, a couple of games where things went sideways, but overall, positive returns on the style he's trying to implement. More sort of north-south, less regrouping, less sort of screwing around with the puck, and just kind of going ahead and off the rush and forechecking and cycling the puck, all that kind of stuff. So that's there. And then you've got Chris Tanev, shot blocking machine, breaks the puck out fantastically. He's looked like he has in previous years. It's just he's sliding so nicely onto that first pair with Morgan Rielly. Oliver Ekman-Larsson's looked really good. So, Max Pacioretty until last night was looking like, a questionable signing, but, it's early in the season. But on aggregate, Brad Treliving's work in the offseason is looking pretty sharp. So that jumps off the page as a positive. As a negative, I don't know. I think you can nitpick with, how the production from Matthews and from a couple of the stars. I think, someone like Simone Benoit hasn't looked good. They've got a bunch of guys injured / sitting right now that make a bunch of money, combined. Like a Timothy Liljegren makes $3 million. That, like, what are they even going to do with these guys? At some point, something's got to break, and they don't have a ton of leverage in trade talks when that does become the case. So that's certainly something to keep an eye on in terms of, maybe not getting back what a player is worth because they're in a bit of a cap crunch.
How is their power play so anemic?
I know, that's the thing. And
like, with all of that talent, you would think that would be the one thing that you could count on, that the Matthews and the Marners and the Nylanders would eat at 5-on-4. It's been the exact opposite, and this dates back to the middle of last season. Yeah, they've traditionally in the Matthews-Marner era been very good in the regular season and then fallen off in the playoffs, or at least, every power play has lulls. But yeah, this has been pretty prolonged. If you go back to the end of last regular season, the playoffs, and now the first 9-10 games of this season, there's been a fair amount of discussion in the Toronto market as far as like taking guys off the first unit, mixing in new guys, trying to get maybe more of a 1-2 punch with the first and second unit playing evenly. And there's always this undertone of like not wanting to upset people, taking, a Marner or a Tavares off the first power play and it being a big storyline. It's like, are we not dealing with adults here? Like, so there, Berube has done that. He shuffled the deck, but, maybe it came a game or two late in terms of like it being so obvious that a change needed to be made. So there's still some of that going on where you're wondering, Mark Savard is the new power play coach. Is this just sort of working out the kinks? Is it a matter of splitting up the duties, having Nylander run one unit and Matthews being featured on the other, and seeing what kind of shakes out from that? The good thing, though, with like early power play struggles is that you've got a really long runway. If you're a good team and can win games without power play goals, which the Leafs are one of those teams. So I wouldn't say I'm like overly concerned if, in terms of what this will mean for their entire trajectory over the season. Because I find that those things kind of work themselves out if you have enough talent. You can say the same thing about what's going on with the Oilers when McDavid comes back. So it is what it is to some extent. And as long as they're trying new things, I think it'll all come together. You mentioned the Oilers. That was the big story. I mean, listen, everyone here in Winnipeg and Toronto was focused in on Canada Life Center. We were kind of leaving Vegas and taking a look at the other games that were on the tube. It was the sports equinox, so there was so much going on. You got the Monday Night Football game and the World Series going on. I look over, I'm like, what the heck? It's 4-0 Columbus. I didn't realize till afterwards that Connor McDavid left the game. I believe he only had a shift or two and then was gone. They've got him back to Edmonton. And listen, I was of the opinion that don't even worry about Edmonton. They're just too damn good not to be, never mind in the playoffs, but one of those top teams in the Pacific, which is kind of one of the weakest divisions if you look at the bottom of it. All bets are off if Connor McDavid's gone for any long period of time. Now, we do remember they were dead last in the league in late November last year and ended up going to the Stanley Cup. But nerves about McDavid's status for the next few weeks, I think, has to be a real concern. Their power play, speaking of power plays that weren't clicking early on, has not been very good early on in the season. But there also is something to be said about that Stanley Cup hangover. You get so close, you go right to the finish line and come up just short. The expectations, and I remember here in Winnipeg when the Jets, I remember when the Jets went to the conference finals. The next season, John, the team had a great start, and it was just sort of like with the team and almost the fans, okay, kind of wake us up in the playoffs. Well, it doesn't work like that. And the Jets fell off miserably in the second half of the season, ended up getting bounced by St. Louis. I do have, not big overreaching concerns about Edmonton, but I'll tell you what, if McDavid's out, maybe this team needs to learn how to do a little bit more when 97 isn't taking over and controlling. A lot on the shoulders of Leon Draisaitl. You're already under 500 to begin. You've had a couple ugly losses, including last night. It just goes, you can't just wake up and book your ticket and say, I'll see you in round one of game one.
Yeah, I'm not overly concerned about McDavid, it just by the sounds of what his injury is, it's very minor. And, if he's out a week, they'll survive. But I think the concerns go deeper than the top guys. Obviously you want McDavid playing at an Art Ross, Hart Trophy level, and he hasn't been at that pace so far. Same with Leon Draisaitl. But, we have a long enough track record that, unless these guys are seriously injured, although in Draisaitl's case in the playoffs, when he's seriously injured, it doesn't affect his production. But unless they're seriously injured, they'll be fine. They're still smack dab in their prime. And, they still have Hyman. He'll figure it out. They'll still have Bouchard. My problem is with that second pair with Nurse. Who's playing with him? Are they able to cover up his problems? And then also, I don't know, there's a lot of focus on the power play right now, and there are numbers there. Well, guess what? Their penalty kill is worse in the league. And part of that is goaltending. I'm not saying it's all goaltending. They need to figure out the personnel in front of the goaltending and whatever diamond shape they're running with right now, and just figure out that penalty kill. But at the same time, I think it's pretty obvious that Stuart Skinner needs a better partner. I don't think Calvin Pickard is it. And you're kind of stuck with Skinner because you've committed to him in terms of a couple of years here and some money. I don't think you need to go big game hunting. But I think if you're Stan Bowman, the GM in Edmonton, I think having a more capable partner for Skinner would be high on my list. And I don't know if it's through waivers, you just take a chance on a guy and hope for the best. I don't know if it's through sort of a more minor trade. You don't need to get some hot prospect or some guy that's a starter on another team, but just a different option than Pickard. And then also, figure out the penalty kill and supplement the blue line a little bit more. I see these issues in Edmonton more as a bottom of the lineup thing. And also, we can't sort of gloss over the fact that they won, quote unquote, won the opening of free agency with, oh, what a great Skinner contract, what a great Arvidsson contract. But then they suffer those two losses of Holloway and Broberg later in the offseason. And guess what? Broberg would look pretty nice right now on that blue line. Holloway would look great on that penalty kill. So I think there's something to be said for losing young guys who are on the rise, who have more to give. And what we've seen so far.
Well, they're the oldest team in the league.
Yeah.
I mean, it's now or never, it seems, for a good portion of this roster. I mean, not Connor or Leon, but everybody else. And you mentioned, listen, they put themselves in a situation where they were very vulnerable and ended up getting burned on it with those two young players. And Broberg's had a great start had a really great start in St. Louis so far. Yeah. One other team I want to ask you about, and I actually saw them play on Friday when I was in Vegas against the Golden Knights. It's the Ottawa Senators. And that was a wild game in that Ottawa came out with a great start. They were getting some depth scoring. Gaudette had 2 goals in the game. They had multiple leads, and they were up 1 goal and probably were the better team for the first 55 minutes of the game. But they just were not able to close. And I mean, listen, it gave me some flashbacks to other games involving the Jets and the Golden Knights where there's something that they're just able to raise their level in the most crucial situations of the game. And I was talking with Alex Adams offline, who covers the Sens, and he said it very well. A really talented team that is getting better, but they just don't have it in their DNA of just knowing what it takes to win, closing out games. And against a team like Vegas, you could really get victimized, and they did. Like, is there more optimism or pessimism? Because the time is now with all of their picks. I mean, I think the expectations were by now we would see Ottawa contending to at least be a playoff team. And I mean, obviously, we're still very early into this season, but I'm still not sure that that's going to be happening this year.
Yeah, I mean, when I was coming in the season, the big question for me was at center with them. Like, Josh Norris has not been able to stay healthy. So if he's your second line center, you're looking pretty good because you got Shane Pinto behind him, and that slots in really nicely. But if you don't, all of a sudden Pinto's got to kind of overperform. And what does that look like? And then they bring out, they bring in some wingers like a David Perron, and okay, how do they fit in? So I thought a lot about the forward group and the new bodies there, even though, say, Tim Stützle, their first line center, is well established. Like, okay, does he hit his 90-point mark that he did a couple of years ago? Or is he more towards 80 points, 75, and he's not quite the stud that we thought he was? And the reason why the focus from my perspective was on the forwards is because I thought, Travis Green is coming in. He's going to install a new system. It's going to take a while to work out the kinks. There's still overall a pretty young roster. So I thought, okay, defensively, they're going to rely on Linus Ullmark a fair bit. And that's proved to be pretty true. And he missed a few games due to injury already. So it's just, they're one of those teams, like when you're talking, Hustler, about the Vegas game, like if you had given me a guess, if you had said, Vegas, came back against this team, and I had to guess who it was, and I, for whatever reason, didn't know that the Sens were there, like they would have been one of my top 3 guesses as this team that for years and years now just becomes so unreliable defensively, so fragile, and I don't know. They bottomed out. They drafted a bunch of guys. They hit on a fair amount of them, but the construction of the roster still leaves so much to be desired. And that's with a guy like Jake Sanderson breaking out last season, this season, and being a real stud back there. But I don't know. I still look at them and I still see a team that's 1 or 2, like top 4, top 6 guys away from being like a strong playoff contender. There's something missing with that roster.
John Matisz is with us from The Score. What's cooking on the site coming up over the next little while? You got more content on the Canadian NHL teams for people to jump into?
Yeah, sure. And actually, one thing I'm working on this week is just looking at a few players that I feel like have leveled up this season. And one guy who I'm going to focus on is Cole Perfetti. So, not necessarily throwing the breakout term out there for these guys that I'm going to focus on, but just guys that through the early going, you're looking over and going, this guy did something in the off season that's taking him to the next level, or he's got more opportunities and he's seizing it. And with Perfetti, Hustler, just quickly here, like at the Player Media Tour in Vegas, he was, I asked him about what he was working on in the off season and what he kind of focused on, the little details. And I thought it was really on point that he mentioned that he focused a lot on not dusting the puck off so much when he gets the puck from a pass. And, what that means essentially is like he focused on having a quicker release and not being so cerebral. Like his bread and butter is being a cerebral player. He's not trying to get away from that fully, but it's just a matter of, hey, if you have that shot, take it. Don't overthink it. Don't grab the puck and do a quick stick handle and then take your shot. And I think we've seen it before, seen it so far this season, where if you look back on his goals, there's I guess more of a shooter mentality there. And I just find it interesting when guys focus on something in the off season and you see it early on. It's like, well, I guess that was a smart choice by whoever was in your ear there and telling you this is what you need to do to get to the next level.
Well, it's funny you say that. He has got a pretty damn good example of that in his own locker room with Kyle Connor and watching what he's been doing right now. And I mean, listen, Cole had that nice winner on Saturday night against the Calgary Flames and has had a real good start to the season. John, always great having you on the program. Let's do this again soon. Appreciate it as always.
All right. Thanks for having me on. Have a good one, guys.
Good stuff. There's John Matisz from The Score. You can check out his piece at thescore.com. All right, we're going to focus back in on the Jets with Murat. We do have what should be a very fun Bomber conversation coming up in a little bit with Derek Taylor of CJOB, who called the game. And as I mentioned, I was listening to it from Vegas because we weren't able to get the game and weren't in a place to go and get the CFL Plus going. Man, the guys did a great job. We will get to that coming up a little later on. All of our Bomber reports brought to you by Princess Auto. And, of course, Princess Auto Stadium is the place to be November 9th for that game. For a trip to the Grey Cup against either BC or Saskatchewan, Princess Auto, headquartered and founded right here in Winnipeg. And, of course, coast to coast in Canada. They are also great supporters of Winnipeg Sports Talk. If you're going to the game on the 9th and you're not at the Jet game, get there early for the Princess Auto Tailgate Zone. And make sure to visit them, Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, Brandon location as well, for the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto, and shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. Well, there was no victory shot last night for Canadian club drinkers and Jet fans last night. But there certainly was on the weekend after the Bombers clinched the West in incredible fashion. Canadian Club, of course, is the official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and is available throughout Princess Auto Stadium. And I imagine there'll be a lot of CC keeping Bomber fans warm and loud November 9th for the CFL West Final. Of course, you can pick up Canadian Club and the entire Beam Suntory family of spirits at your local Manitoba liquor marts, and keep your eye out and the next time you pop into your local beer store for CC and ginger ale premix cocktail in a cans. Great stuff as well. Our friends at Wallace & Wallace have had quite the summer into fall, but they're 12 months a year because not only are the fencing specialists in town, they're also the go-to guys for overhead garage doors with the biggest selection in town. Hey, they've been serving residential and commercial customers since 1946 with all of your fencing needs, but they also can help add value to your home and get the perfect match for a new garage door for your family as the Clopay dealer with the largest selection of garage doors in town. For either fencing needs or overhead doors, give them a call, 204-452-2700. The Wallace & Wallace team will arrange a time to come out and give you a free estimate. You can also visit them at wallacefences.com or pop down to their showroom on Lawson Crescent off of Kenniston. And big thanks to F Apparel as well. Guys, the holidays, if you can believe it, are just around the corner. If you're looking into your closet and realize that you need to step up your menswear game, head on down to F Apparel, 190 Smith Street downtown, for the best in custom men's suits, beginning at just $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and an incredible selection of menswear accessories. If you are getting married or in a wedding party, make sure to talk to the fellas at F Apparel. A 15% discount when you get your suits for the big day at F Apparel. Again, they're at 190 Smith Street. You can find out more online and make an appointment to come in for a fitting at F. That's EPH Apparel.com. All right, let's welcome in our pal Murat from The Athletic. Murat, great to talk to you again. How are you doing today, my friend?
Hey, I don't know if I'll throw this out to you and anybody in the chat. Do you have a favorite way to crack your back? Not just the implication that you need to sort of like crack your back on a regular basis, but I've got a few different moves now. So yeah, and you know what? I'm doing well. I'm a little sore, I guess, somehow. I guess I'm aging.
Well, you know what? I think the Jets are maybe feeling a little ways that way as well today. And listen, they needed to get cracked, not maybe after the second period, but after the first period. What did you make of the start of that game in the first period that was seemingly all Toronto, for a team that had so much success and a lot of excitement going into a game and a great atmosphere at Canada Life Center. A real dud out of the gate for a team that, had done great over 60 minutes, but when you dive in a little bit more, was incredibly 6-0-0 after giving up the first goal. It wasn't just one, though. They kept coming for Toronto before the Jets got back into the game on the power play.
Yeah, it was not a good start. That's obvious. I mean, 4 straight goals for the Maple Leafs. But right from the get, the Toronto Maple Leafs had pace and execution that the Jets didn't. I don't know where to even start. Logan Stanley's closing the hand on the puck penalty sort of indicated it was a pretty good sign of what was to come. And just before that penalty, he'd gotten beat backdoor. Matthew Nyes got up behind him. Stanley wasn't aware of it. The pass came across and Nyes just misfired. Later on the same shift, Stanley takes that penalty, and it sort of puts Winnipeg behind the 8 ball. The penalty kill's been good. They got through it. And then later on, you have a complete cluster of a shift as Sandberg and Pionk and Niederreiter and various others try to get the puck out, leading to John Tavares' game-opening goal. And it just doesn't work. It's, it's an unfortunate bounce that finishes the play, but Winnipeg had all kinds of reason to blame itself for not getting that puck out. You go on William Nylander's goal. I mean, just a perfect read of Neil Pionk's breakout pass. And Pionk's coming out of the corner, puts the puck in front of the net. That's a breakout pass you can only make if you make it. That's one of those situations where teams do break out with that pass into the middle, just with less traffic than that and with better execution and a better pass. So that's a problem. It went on to be a really horrid night statistically for the Pionk and Sandberg pair. And then by the end of the game, we sort of saw all the things that sometimes go wrong when a Winnipeg night goes wrong. They went wrong. Second period opens. Connor Hellebuck looks to make a breakout pass of his own. Doesn't see Matthew Nyes bearing in on him. That giveaway was the sort of thing that you saw about a few seconds before it happened if you get to watch it from the easy seats 200 foot above ice level. And it just goes on from there. So, okay, the Jets are 8-1-0. Like Josh Morrissey said, they weren't going to go 82-0. That's true. It's just a little bit, probably Jets fans are waking up with the disappointing air that it was Toronto who did it, and that it was such a dominant affair with the Jets just not executing well at all through most of that game.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, listen, they did get back into it, but as Scott Arniel said afterwards, and we'll get to this in a minute, the 5-on-5 play just didn't cut it, and they weren't generating much at all. It's just sometimes bizarre having these conversations that this team, after struggling the way that they had last year on special teams, in a lot of ways is getting absolutely carried by their league #1 overall power play, Murat. And listen, it's a huge development and a major positive, and probably the biggest reason why this team is at 8-1, in addition to some pretty good defensive play. But as we heard yesterday for the first time, some real outward frustration from Scott Arniel on the 5-on-5 play, and we did see the lines get shaken up as well during last night's game, trying to get a little bit more going when things were even.
Yeah, the frustration was well-deserved. I mean, he counted 2 scoring chances for the Winnipeg Jets at 5-on-5 through 40 minutes, and I'm not sure what his third period count would have been. It wouldn't have been that much higher than that. It was really not one of those games where Winnipeg was getting to the middle of the ice. Your point, though, about how different it is year over year. I mean, the Jets won 8 games to close off last season. They won 8 games to open this one, but the way they're doing it is night and day. And let's plant some yellow flags, some potential red flags in about the Winnipeg Jets. They've been outscored at 5-on-5 so far this season. They've been outchanced at 5-on-5 so far this season. They've been outshot at 5-on-5 so far this season. That's not what Winnipeg Jets hockey is supposed to be, at least not in the Rick Bowness and Scott Arniel era. So that is a problem. It's not as though they're going off at 5-on-5 offense and it's just a defensive problem. I think they're 17th in goals for, or they have 17 goals, and they're 19th. They're towards the bottom of the league table in goals for. So they're winning because they've scored 5 6-on-5 goals, more than any other team in the league. 6-on-5 is not a situation that's going to repeat itself a whole bunch during the regular season, except for at the tail end of games. The other thing is that they've got 12 power play goals, which ties for the most power play goals in the league. And you know what, I think their power play is legitimately good, but to run at the percentage that they have is going to be difficult to do. They've been so effective there. So this is a team with some pretty substantial strengths and some pretty substantial weaknesses, despite an 8-1-0 record that might make it look like that they're a nearly perfect team. They're certainly not. 5-on-5 is going to be the area to improve. That line shuffle, we'll see if it lasts into Detroit. It's been rare that those types of shuffles do, but it's the first time we've seen Arniel go to it, and we'll really get a sense for him as we see how he comes out of the night and into the next game.
I know you'll probably have a much deeper dive coming up in the Athletic at some point, but any theories on what isn't happening at 5-on-5 and how this team generates more and creates more at 5-on-5?
Well, they have given at least 3 of their best offensive players a combination of line mates that doesn't get the puck out of their zone. I would say that's a pretty good starting spot. You can nitpick at certain goals against and goals for, and you can point out that Scheifele, Connor, and Velarde have been on fire at special teams. Wonderful players doing great things, but you put the 3 of them together and that line gets stuck in its own zone. That transition offense isn't really there for them because their breakouts don't necessarily always work. They got caught up at their blue line. They get caught up at their blue line and they end up playing too much on defense. So you're robbing the Winnipeg Jets of their offensive brilliance by going to a combination that doesn't spend as much time in the offensive zone. They're not killing it at 5-on-5 offense. So that's an issue. I think the only line at 5-on-5 that has been without question all season long has been the Adam Lowry line. That's the one for me that you wouldn't want to touch that. If you can solve things somehow else, that's the one that you'd want to keep together. Because look, you're not gonna airlift in a Chris Tanev or a Matisz Ekholm or a Mackenzie Weegar to upgrade the defense overnight. You're not going to break up that Lowry line. We've seen no interest in that from the coaches. So what can you do? And it's really got to be about 5-on-5 execution, and it's whatever it keeps Scheifele and Connor playing in the offensive zone, because, I mean, they're your offensive killers, and they're really only doing it at special teams.
We did see some line shakeups, which often happen when you're struggling the way they did last night. I would imagine, based on where the team is, they go back to where they were to start the Detroit game. Could be wrong. I guess that we'll see play it out. But, if they do get to the point where they do switch, like within the top 6, what do you think makes the most sense? If you were an advisor to the coaching staff, you're in that group, what do you think makes the most sense to try to get a little bit more time in the O-zone as opposed to running around trying to get the puck back and defending?
Yeah, and that's where it becomes a real live, difficult human-to-human situation, right? Because the obvious data-based answer is Ehlers, Scheifele, Velarde. That is the obvious 5-on-5 source of success. You saw it when Connor was hurt last season. You've seen it in stints. Even in the playoffs, they went to it for a period. They generated some things. Last night, one of the penalties that they drew en route to their almost comeback was Scheifele setting Nikolai Ehlers onto an area pass, and Ehlers jumps into the zone. He goes down. There's a lot there. The problem with that on the human level, even though it's true, you can play that line at 5-on-5 and still get Kyle Connor enormous minutes on the power play and at other situations. But if you're asking me for the list of problems on that top line as it's structured, I don't think Kyle Connor's number 1 or number 2. So you're going to take him off of that top line to go in the name of history, the historical success Ehlers, Scheifele, and Velarde have had. Honestly, that's a little awkward to me. And the Winnipeg Jets, without Pierre-Luc Dubois and without an airlifted center like Sean Monahan, there's one premier center on the Winnipeg Jets. It's Mark Scheifele. So you're going to take Kyle Connor, who's had actually a really great offensive start to the season and who could probably make hay if he's kept in the offensive zone away from that great center. So maybe now you think about Ehlers, Scheifele, and Connor on that top line, and they've had some success. Then what you're doing is you're bumping Velarde off, who makes sense based, I think, on 5-on-5 pace and execution so far. And now 2/3 of that next line with Velarde and Perfetti on it aren't really that quick, and what happens to that line as well. So for me, I would understand. I got to say, I would understand. Scott Arniel has been pretty devoted, I guess. That's not the right word, but most Jets staffs have been devoted to the Connor Scheifele-Vilardi attempt since Vilardi's arrived. The 8-1 in a row record buys you some time to keep trying it. They even went back to it last night after the game got close, right? After the 5-4 goal, they ran Adam Lowry's line with Niederreiter and Appleton. Then they ran the Scheifele, Connor, and Vilardi line, keeping Ehlers on the bench, waiting to become the extra attacker. Then they couldn't get into the zone. They iced it. So clearly getting that puck up of the ice has been an issue for that group. I think probably the best solution is Ehlers, Scheifele, and Connor for now, because I have a tough time going to Ehlers, Scheifele, and Vilardi when Connor's been, I want to say, the best player of those three on that top line. It would be difficult to bump him down.
You know, I think you laid it out very, very well. I have a lot of time for getting Ehlers up on that line. Kyle Connor's the most lethal goal scorer on this team, and then goals are important. And, you know, do you have him in a spot to get the most out of him if he's, you know, not playing with Mark Scheifele? But even if you have those players up, I really do wonder what's left of that second line. I mean, you know, like, with all due respect to Vlad, I mean, and I think he's doing a fine job in a situation that maybe is a little above where you would normally slot him in. And Cole Perfetti's been good, but I mean, he just doesn't have those wheels. Like, how does that line look if it's Vilardi, Perfetti, and Nemetsnikov? And I think that's what the coaching staff looks at and realize. To be honest, it kind of reminds me of Edmonton. If you go with Ehlers, Connor, and Scheifele, to me, that's sort of the equivalent of putting Draisaitl and McKinnon and McDavid together. And if you do that, you've got this one really powerful line. Will you better be getting a lot from that? Because I think what you leave in that second unit is one that significantly decreases the offensive potential if it's not a guy like Nikolai Ehlers really running the play themselves. Although Cole Perfetti to me is intriguing, and maybe we can move to him, because I do think that there is the potential for Cole to be in some different areas or maybe different looks with line mates that might actually be more than what we think would be the production of it just on paper.
Well, Cole Perfetti for me is a guy, if you get him in the offensive zone, he makes plays that lead to points. It's just a fact of things. In the offseason, we were talking about his contract. I'm saying, look at the amount of passes he makes that directly leads to a scoring chance. For the minutes that he had, he was actually quite impressive on that front. There were a lot of signs even heading into the season that top six success was available to Cole Perfetti. And I mean, some nights that line's the second line, sometimes it's the third line. Either way, when they've gotten out there, they've generally produced, and a cold start has turned to a bit of a hot opening 9 games, I guess, to the season so far. So there's a lot to like there. I think one of the reasons, and this almost ties into the previous discussion, one of the reasons we haven't seen Cole Perfetti used as a center, despite coming up into the NHL that way, is that Scott Arniel, like Rick Bowness before him, is looking at speed as an issue. He doesn't want Cole Perfetti to always be below his goal line and then be expected to get into the offensive zone play. On transition, he's a slower option amongst Jets centers. I think that's the same reason that Gabriel Vilardi doesn't get that situation as well. They seem to believe that speed is a key to the way that they play, and particularly speed at their center position. I think that's what's keeping some of the structure as it is with respect to lines. I think that's some of the answer, not the whole thing, to be clear. So Cole Perfetti, I think he's a weapon. I think that he's a weapon that does depend a little bit on line mates to make sure he's playing in the offensive zone. That's why Nikolai Ehlers is a great partner for him as well, like he is for so many players on the Jets. And, you know, without an obvious Pierre-Luc Dubois on this team, not to go back to the old days, but Dubois was where Connor had so much of his success. And that line with Perfetti for a little while, too, was a pretty good one as well. There's no obvious solution. You got to try either leaning into the Nemestikov situation as you are, or if you want to try new ideas, Perfetti or Vilardi in that sort of role. I think Winnipeg's scared about the speed, but it might be forced into something before the season's halfway over.
You know what? Let me fire out the why not question of the day to the chat for Not Autocorp over at Waverly and McGillivray. If you are tweaking the top six, how do you do it? Give us your 2 lines in the chat. Now, our pal the Jets Pope has popped in and said, Connor and Scheifele just don't work well together. We have to accept this and move on from it. Fair or foul?
For me, the net results say that they don't. But if you break up the game into different contexts, I think they can work at 5-on-5 if they get into the offensive zone with consistency. And I think that's really your only option to fix that is Nikolai Ehlers or Blake Wheeler in his prime. Like, they see plays. They absolutely do. They make passes to each other with timing and in the right spots. Connor attacks lane. Scheifele gets it to him. The problem is they're not in that situation often enough for it to make hay, because in the defensive zone, they're not getting out. The two of them often end up leaning a little bit offensive heavy. They get on the wrong side of the blue line, or at least on the wrong side of their check before the puck gets out. They're not winning the battles on the walls, and that is something that Kyle Connor can struggle with. I've said he's the best of those 3 so far. So they're not getting out. So if the question is, can those two have success on a line together? 100% they can. They need a line mate that's doing a lot of the heavy lifting for them in terms of transition. But is it working as constructed right now? No, it's not. And you need to find contexts where they're going to have success or break them apart.
I see David Dirksen saying swap Perfetti and Velarde, which would then have Gabe playing with Vlad Nemetsnikov and Ehlers and Perfetti. I mean, I do have a little bit of time for, I guess, how that would work. But I mean, to your point, Murat, I don't know that Cole right now, with his game overall, provides the same sort of oomph that Ehlers would in that situation. Now, I'll preface this entire conversation with the fact that I don't think this is the way that top 6 is going to look. Well, if the team keeps on winning and it's a playoff team, then, we'll probably see something happen like we've seen in the past before. If that's where they want to go to add, whether it be trade, there's also Brad Lambert. And, again, I don't think this is imminent or anything like that. But, towards the end of November into December, if he's playing at a high level in the American Hockey League, it does give them an option to maybe come in and bring him at a time where his confidence is high after playing well in the American Hockey League and mixing in. Because I think Brad Lambert has many, I'm not saying that he's on Ehlers' caliber at all. I mean, he's basically hasn't played in the National Hockey League. He has 1 game. But the skill set he has, along with that speed, could potentially be a nice fit in the mix somewhere, as long as you can handle the other parts of what, would be leaned on you in that role, playing some significant minutes against NHL competition.
100%. All the sort of the hesitancies or the complaints that, I think trouble the Jets a little bit about committing Cole Perfetti or Gabriel Velarde to center. Well, I think it's about foot speed. And I could be wrong on that front, but I think that's the sort of impression that I've gotten. Brad Lambert has no such issue, right? If the issue is about can he go from end boards to end boards and keep pace at both sides of the ice, that's not a question even remotely for Brad Lambert. It's going to be about the rigors of the game, the positioning, the lines that he takes, the puck protection, the decisions he makes, all those sorts of things. But foot speed won't be about it at all. And I think in the long run, that's the hope. Winnipeg probably sees Scheifele and Lambert as kind of a 1-2 punch there. If Lambert does make the NHL this season, gets the type of call-up that you describe, there's an easy formula for it, because that Scheifele line gets the tough opponents. Other teams run their best players at Scheifele. There's a lot of power versus power there. Lowry, we've seen them come out second most often, more often than not. So it's an easy secondary scoring line that decision-wise, it's an easy spot to put him if you're promoting Brad Lambert to the NHL. So there are minutes, there are soft minutes available there to hopefully make his transition a little bit easier if and when the Jets determine that he's earned that shot without the idea that he's going to look back at any point. And to be honest, there is a world in which at some point this season, Nikolai Ehlers is traded. And if that doesn't yield a center, which I think if they got a great center, that would be an easy decision for them, depending on what his future is, well, then Brad Lambert might be the guy that they see there. If Brad Lambert was further along, I think it would be an easier decision. That this would be his first year. I think that you probably need Ehlers more than any kind of return. But these are the types of shifts we're going to see with the Winnipeg Jets roster. The only question is how soon.
Just on Ehlers for a minute, and I'm sure I will probably ask you this question multiple times this year. But what's your feeling right now? What are the chances Ehlers is a Jet next season, percentage-wise?
Oh man, it's such a tough question, and I've spoken to Ehlers about it. I've spoken to other people about it, trying to get a sense, and I really don't feel like I have things pegged. My guess is that he's more likely than not to have a look at the UFA market and see what his future could hold. My guess is also, and I feel more confident in this one, that in the realm of long-term financial commitments, I think the Jets are more worried and more concerned about making sure there's money for Kyle Connor next year as opposed to Nikolai Ehlers now. So there's a couple of things that make me think that no, but we've seen the Jets also surprise us from time to time. We may see them then double back on Ehlers or offer extensions, and we might see him double back or what have you. I don't feel like I know, but I'm going to say less than half is my guess at Ehlers' probability of being a Jet next year.
Yeah, I'm sort of with you too. I mean, I think if I had to peg a number right now, I'm kind of thinking in like the 35% range, something like that. I mean, I'd love to be able to say it was 50 or higher, but I'm sort of that opinion, just based on what we've heard, what you and others have reported, and the very real situation that's going to come with Kyle Connor. And listen, you see what he's done so far this year. I mean, you just don't replace guys like that. But, I mean, others will make an argument that you'll have a pretty damn hard time replacing a guy like Nikolai Ehlers, which makes this season to start so I think important that they make something of this and can continue moving for this. Just quickly moving to the blue line so far. And listen, I'm going to give Pionk and Samberg sort of a mulligan for last night. I mean, it was sort of one of those Murphy's Law nights for them that what could go wrong did so far. Overall, though, just your thoughts on the Jet blue line up until this point. And take the record out of it. But, I mean, from your expectations at the start of the season. And, I mean, I think we can basically say that this is the sixth regular group. I know Logan Stanley takes a lot of heat in the chat. I mean, to me, he's been fine since, he certainly hasn't done anything that would play himself out of the lineup right now. That obviously probably changes somewhat when Ville Heinola is back and they get a look at him. But, I mean, just thoughts on the Jet blue line right now through 9 games.
Yeah, it's a series of mild surprises, maybe, is how I would put it. I don't think Josh Morrissey's taken over games like he traditionally does. And even though I say that, there have been moments like the move he makes walking the blue line last night to draw a penalty that helps get things going as well. Like that, Josh Morrissey is still a great player, even when I don't think he's been dominating night in and night out. Dylan DeMello, I think, who's generally been the best partner for Morrissey night in, night out for so long, I think he's still getting going. I don't think that top pair has been as effective defensively as we've seen it in the last few years. So that's an item of concern, I think. A yellow flag, we'll call it. Dylan Samberg, I think his step forward into covering top 4 defensive responsibilities has, other than last night, been a success, a pretty resounding one. I think he's still prone to the occasional puck wobble, but overall, you just like the way he scans the ice. You like the positioning he makes. You like the fact that he doesn't get beat backdoor. To open the show, I criticized Stanley for getting beat backdoor on one of the first shifts of his game last night. Samberg doesn't get beat that way, and that's why he's in the top 4 and Stanley's been on the third pair. But Neil Pionk was the biggest question mark heading into the season. Last night's mess, be excused, it's largely been a confident, aggressive, mobile effort for him. He's been a bit high event, but it's been a lot of quality, or at least more quality than in the last few years. So there's a little bit of hope emerging. And so how they respond from last night's mess is going to be a big one, I think, for the Jets. I still think, even if you get the blue sky version of all 4 of those players, if there's a way to pad that group with somebody who has the puck skill to make a good breakout pass, but also the bite that you might like if you're the Winnipeg Jets going a couple of rounds deep in the playoffs. They've not gotten the Ekholms of the world. They've not gotten the Tanevs of the world in recent years. That's something you might like from them if they think that they're a contender in the second half of the season, or just hold on to your assets, I suppose. Third pair, I think Logan Stanley's game last night was not quality, and I think it's time for Hayden Fleury. Colin Miller, though, another bright spot, and certainly Ville Heinola will get into that mix.
What have you thought? I mean, outside of last night, just Stanley's performance overall.
It's been all right. Like, it's hard to watch a guy that big move that well and think, okay, this guy can't be an everyday NHL player. But I think that he's been caught out for certain goals against and been out of position and things like that. It's just, for me, it's a Reeds situation. I don't think that he gets to the right spot and scans the ice and takes away the scoring chances. And I think it's a decision-making thing. Maybe that's something that takes 200, 300 NHL games before it hits for him, because certainly he has the toolkit, and certainly he's a well-liked teammate, and the Jets appreciate him. I just think that the quality of scoring chance available against him can get pretty high sometimes.
Murat, always love having you on the program. What's coming up in the Athletic this week as the Jets hit the road for a couple of games before coming back for, as I described it, some heavy hitters coming in. I mean, you've got Utah, I think, is a team that's on the rise, but Tampa, Dallas, and Colorado, high leverage games in the division for a massive homestand next week.
Yeah, right now I'm knee deep in a 2-part mailbag. We've been collecting questions that have gotten a little more intense since the 8-0 became 8-1.
You don't say.
Yeah, the stakes seem to have risen, but of course it's still a good team that's been a real fun one to cover, and there's been a lot of great questions asked, a lot of great discussions there. So that'll be what goes up next. Certainly, I hope everybody got a chance to read my 2-part one-on-one with Scott Arniel over the weekend. The analytics inside the summit last Thursday, and then over the weekend we put up sort of what Scott Arniel have to say about all these line combinations. Why is Connor and Scheifele a go-to duo for them, and all that sort of stuff. We got into that over the weekend as well. So I hope people make sure to read both of those. Certainly the numbers have been good on those, and then the mailbags are what we have coming up next with some juicy cues coming up.
Murat, thanks as always for the time. Enjoy the games this week, and we'll talk to you soon. Appreciate it as always.
Thanks, Huss. Thanks for having me.
There is Murat Atesh. You can check out all of his work at theathletic.com. All right, let's get to some fan feedback for our friends at Fans First. That was a very busy site last night. Got a couple more really nice emails from folks that have been using the service, either for buying and selling tickets and have had great experiences. Fan feedback is brought to you by fansfirst.ca, your best option for buying and selling tickets with no fees. What you see is what you pay. No shortage of fan feedback on the topics we just hit with Murat Atesh. Boring Sean Monahan likes Scheifele, Connor, Ehlers, and then taking a look at Brad Lambert with Cole Perfetti and Gabriel Velarde, keeping the Lowry line together and having Vlad in the middle with Iafallo and Morgan Barron. I'd have some time for that. I think we're going to see that at some point, and Rasmus Kupari would end up being the 13th forward. The big thing is just, these first couple months of Brad's season, how that goes, at what point they really do feel that he's ready to come in and not just be there, but, be productive and help the team win hockey games. We've got, a whole bunch more coming in here. Let's see. Jets Pope, Ehlers, Scheifele, Connor would be awesome. I've thought Ehlers and Connor seem to have great chemistry together with the extra man. Definitely not going to disagree with that. And then Cole Sawchuk, something that we've just kind of been talking about. They need to try Lambert come January. Lots to talk about Nino Niederreiter. Listen, there's an argument that you do not touch the Lowry line right now with Nino. I still certainly feel, and I kind of thought that this would happen last year at some point, that we'd see Morgan Barron more consistently on Adam Lowry's wing. And I think Nino has shown in the past that he certainly can play there in that top six. But in reality, is the Lowry line not part of the top six right now with what they've done so far? So here we go. Choices TK. Problem is Jets have one player that puts teams on their heels and forces them to react. Ehlers. Lambert would be another player with that element to their game. Keep it coming in the chat right now. Always enjoy your fan feedback. Again, fan feedback brought to you by fansfirst.ca. By fans, for fans, no fees. Check them out at fansfirst.ca. All right, a couple quick things. We're just bringing Derek Taylor on. I'll get to more details in the Coolbet lines, but we do have the third Lockshot Poker Tourney tonight. Would love to have you join us. $100 bounty on my head. I think Remis is too. Dustin Nielsen. It's going to be a blast. 9 p.m. Winnipeg time, 8 p.m. in Edmonton. We get going. Download Coolbet or the Coolbet poker app. Just go to Coolbet. You'll click on poker, download the app, go into tournaments. There's a little magnifying glass, search lock, jump in and join us for tonight. And don't forget tomorrow. Let's get the WST crew together. Winnipeg Sports Talk Watch Party, Boston Pizza, Polo Park, 6:30. Recommend getting there early and reserving and getting your spot. Maybe you talk to a few of the crew and you guys can get together and all sit together. You can also reserve a table at Boston Pizza if you're coming with a larger group. Give Boston Pizza Polo Park a call, and we'll see you there tomorrow for that game. All right, I've been looking forward to this conversation ever since Saturday afternoon. I told you that I was, normally watching the games, but due to some circumstances in Las Vegas, threw the buds in and literally listened to just about the entire game. And this man had an incredible call along with Doug Brown. What an absolute roller coaster Saturday was, DT. I mean, living through it through your call was as memorable, honestly, as a radio listening experience as I've had in a long time. And this will be a game that we will be talking about in Winnipeg that I think will go down in Bomber lore as one of the most improbable victories in Bomber history, with the stakes being so high. Have you recovered from it?
I kind of haven't, because there were so many parts to it, right? Like on the one level, we'll be like, remember that win that came up and it helped the Bombers win? But there were so many things in advance of that you go, well, that's an interesting choice. Oh, why did that happen? What's the deal with that? And all the way down to, oof, boy, the game is just nuts. And I was trying to think of anything remotely equatable in the couple of years that I've been the voice of the Bombers. And there have been weird things, right? But a sudden gust from Mother Nature blowing maple leaves right into Joe Zima's face is certainly the top of the list.
Well, the funniest thing, as I'm listening to the game and you're sort of painting the picture, was your comment that, oh, they must have just done the 50-50 draw because all the 50-50 tickets were blowing across. And then we kind of got a little bit more inclined that all these leaves were coming for. Take us through this. You're in the booth right now, and it had been a relatively calmer game, and then just out of the blue, we get like a system rolling in that just completely changes the weather conditions, 180 degrees.
Well, so as the game had gone along, there were sunny skies and it was 11, 12 degrees, whatever, when it started, but we knew the wind was going to be up. So when O'Shea takes the win for the fourth quarter, you knew, okay, well, he thinks this is a real good chance to be a factor. And the wind was on and off. There hadn't been any rain until very, very, very late. But the wind was down. It was up. When Sergio attempted that 61-yarder, it was down. They actually expected it to be up in that time, or else they wouldn't have gone for it one quite that long. So it was always there. But that was the worst it possibly was. So there's whatever it is, 20 seconds left, and we're stepping through it all and counting it down. And so our booth is on about the 15-yard line where Zima was punting from. And then all of a sudden, stuff comes rushing over the top of the stands and down onto the field. And in that moment, I'm like, oh, in a game in Winnipeg, this is the point, right, where, oh, I didn't win the 50-50, rip it up and throw it away. The second it came out of my mouth, I went, oh, right, we're in Montreal. 50-50s aren't really a thing unless you're in Montreal, or pardon me, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, or Alberta. So I wanted to pull that one back, but whatever. They were leaves off these maple trees. It's a beautiful setting behind the stadium at McGill, and there were a couple trees that still had their leaves, and that's what was blowing over the top. And yeah, it really illustrated just how hard the wind came in for just that moment. And if Jason Moss doesn't do A, B, or C, it never would have played a factor. But because he did, maybe Joe Zima's drop's affected and he gets his worst punt of the year.
Yeah, and this is a guy that had been very, very good so far. I mean, that was, it really felt listening to it that the 61-yarder, which was a lot farther than I think they would have liked to attempt, they just had to do it. I mean, this was their chance. And at that point, that was it. And I do remember you laying out, okay, this is how long it's going to take for a couple plays. We're probably talking about a punt with about 16 seconds left. But considering how far the punts normally were, I mean, you're probably talking about a Hail Mary or some sort of a trick play. And then to hear the shank happen and the fact that they were getting the ball closer than they already were, it was absolutely game on. And I guess they ran one play and then rolled Sergio back out there. And I will admit, even as unbelievable as it was to be experiencing what I was listening, and I'm sure Mike O'Shea and everyone in that Bomber room had full confidence that Sergio getting another crack, even at over 50 yards with everything on the line, was going to nail that thing through the uprights. And man, did he. I mean, that would have been through if the uprights were 4 feet wide. I mean, it was that down the middle.
Yeah, and I mean, Sergio, we talked to O'Shea afterward, and he said it was an 8 to 10 yard wind, according to Castillo, generally, which, I mean, he hit from 60 in Calgary, and that day he said he could have hit from 65. So going with the wind, which they intended to have, there's no reason to think that it wouldn't have gotten there, right? Because the wind was down, and that ball would have been good from 57, let's say. I forget where Lindsay catches it, but 57, 58 maybe. So, you add 5 with the wind and that ball's through and we're all flipping out the most going, 61-yarder. And then Doug Brown would have been, he's a kicker. That's his job. Calm down. And I wouldn't have been able to calm down. But yeah, it was the thing to do. To me, there was was it 2017 with Medlock in BC? It was Hail Mary or Medlock tries a 61-yarder. This to me felt a little more doable than that just because of the wind. And Castillo set the record for 60-yard field goals in a season and in a career just this year alone, right? So the record for 50-plus yarders in a single season, he extended that with that kick. Like, he's been so fantastic this year on those moonshots, those ones where other teams go, we're going to have to try to coffin corner punt this. Oh, it leaked in for a single, and now we've pooched ourselves. Castillo's been fantastic for the Bombers this year, and there's a few games they don't win without him.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he had like that one rough game in Toronto and one other game, but for the most part, he's been so good. And I mean, God, I was having a conversation with a friend that's a New York Jets fan. Like, the Jets are probably 5-3, 4-4 at worst right now if Sergio's still kicking for them, as opposed to Greg the Leg, who's had a disappointing season. But listen, it takes everyone, to win a game like that. Like, going into that game, did you think that this would be a white knuckle ride right to the finish? I got a lot of respect for Montreal. I was very interested in how they handled the game. But I'll tell you what, I mean, again, listening through you guys, it certainly sounded like they were playing like this was an opportunity to eliminate the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Not that the Bombers wouldn't have still been in the playoffs, but I think we know the stakes were so massive for the Bombers, and they weren't for Montreal, and full marks to them for playing the way they did and really going for the win, knowing that they were going to be off this week. And I think for them, they needed to prove to themselves that they were playoff ready, because they hadn't been particularly great over the last second half of the season, despite essentially booking their ticket a month ago for first place.
In the last 6 games, they'd only beaten Ottawa. Like, they were 2-3-1. They tied Calgary. And if that's a real indictment of a game, is when you tie Calgary, right? Plus, Fajardo had been away for the birth of his child, and he hadn't necessarily gotten all the action he wanted to. He may not have been his sharpest. So once I saw the roster, I thought, okay, well, Montreal's going to try for a good portion of this game. How far it will be, we'll see. But when you put out a 45-man roster, you only have so many backups you can throw in there, like at receiver and such. So I thought, well, Montreal, their record hasn't been good lately. You want to be playing well if you're going to have the bye week and then go to the playoffs. So we're going to see a lot of them. And we did, right? Austin Mack, they're rocking him deep. They really tried to get the ball to Tyler Snead. He had 10 targets in that game, I think, and he had probably 17 coming into the game. Like, they were really trying to get him in there. They were going after it, which I thought was good. Davis Alexander comes in, and they don't just go to a run game. They really go after it again with Alexander. And you went, okay, this is a challenge. So going into it, the line was, I think, 7.5 on Coolbet. And I just couldn't take that because once I saw the depth charts, I thought, Montreal's going to try, and Montreal can be good. I didn't know if I thought it would be that tough. I thought maybe they might lie down at some point and just go, yeah, honestly, we don't care because it doesn't affect our standings. But they were in it right to the bitter end. Having the rookie American returner in his first CFL game might have bit him in the butt, but you're trying out Tyon Lindsay in that spot and getting Letcher a break, right? So yeah, if this was the Grey Cup, they might have done a couple things different, but I think that was probably 85% of their best effort.
An interesting comment in the chat from Chad G. He said, what the Alouettes should have done was let the 61-yarder bounce. It probably goes in the end zone. Run around for whatever you can and give up one. Take the ball at the 40. Even with the shank, the ball is well across midfield, and that opportunity isn't there for the Bombers. That's an interesting way of putting it. You know what I'm also thinking, DT? And again, you spent quite a bit of time in Saskatchewan in your final stop. I was just imagining, because, the Riders, I'm sure, were all watching that game. It had, basically, they were either playing for first place and an opportunity to be at home, or the game meant absolutely nothing, and they're playing this week. I can't imagine what the reaction in that Rider locker room and coaching room was when the wind blew up and the circumstances that somehow gave the Bombers one more opportunity. That must have been tough to take.
Oh, and Coach Mace walks in and goes, Milligan, take your stuff off. You're not playing today. Just multiple guys, right? Trevor Harris was now the third quarterback. They take multiple starters off of the roster, and hey, guys, you're having the day off today. That's awful. But yeah, just improbable finishes, right? Who would ever expect that to be a thing? Maybe he doesn't get a great punt off. Maybe it's only 35 yards. But Winnipeg has to run a play for 15 yards with 7 seconds to go. Oh, I don't know if they can do this. This is something. But to then shank it because of Mother Nature, or as Dwayne Ford said, God is a Bomber fan. Just the total turn. They must have been so jacked in that game when Castillo's kick falls short. All the Riders have been like, let's go get this. And then 2 minutes later, let's go get some popcorn or one of them foot-long hot dogs because I got the day off. It's just the whole everything. I'm just disappointed that Montreal fans probably didn't care too much about the result because it was so emotional for Winnipeg and, as you say, for Saskatchewan and maybe even for BC as well. No, who knows what they were thinking watching this, going, where are we going next week? But yeah, it was everything about it was incredible.
All-time legendary game. And now we move on to the postseason. And then there were 6. The Bombers and Alouettes get to chill this week and watch the games on the tube and prepare for their next opponents. Let's start off in the West. I'm really happy we're getting this. Obviously, I'm a Bomber guy, so I wanted the Bombers to be at home and playing at Princess Auto Stadium on the 9th and not the 2nd. But I'm absolutely fascinated as to how the BC Lions look with VA. They played there, was it 2 weeks ago? Mm-hmm. And they got absolutely steamrolled by Saskatchewan with Nathan Rourke in. They lost by 31 points. The game wasn't even close. BC looked like an entirely different team with VA in that one start. Now, take that for what it is worth. I think the Riders certainly are a better team. They absolutely have a better defense. But I think this one is going to be a hell of a lot closer, at least, than the one was a couple weeks ago. What's your take on this game between Saskatchewan and BC for the right to come to Princess Auto Stadium?
Yeah, I'm on Sask for this one. I just think Saskatchewan has more to work with than BC does. BC's offense, if you could go back and say it's going to be what it was in week 3 against the Bombers, okay, I think they're in there. But Saskatchewan's defense is good. Saskatchewan is good back there. And Trevor Harris knows how to navigate the playoffs. And if they're healthy, if AJ Ouellette sat out that game this past weekend against Calgary, if he's healthy, okay, that's nice. The run game to me is the run game, but that's nice. They've had an extra week to get their offensive line ready. Their receiving core is fantastic. So Keyshawn Johnson will have had the week off. He'll be back in there. Schaefer Baker and the whole gang. Like I really think Saskatchewan is the team that is. Had the Bombers had to go to Saskatchewan, I wouldn't have loved that. Let's just say that. I feel like either team coming to Winnipeg, I'm fine with as a Bomber fan. BC at its offensive peak is really something. Their defense, I'm just not buying. I'm just not buying their defense this year. They've had some injuries, sure, but free agency absolutely clubbed them, and they kind of, to me, haven't been able to figure their way around that. They've had to manipulate their ratio in spots that they'd rather would not have. And I don't know. I don't know what if BC is going to be able to keep Saskatchewan off the board enough. Trevor Harris has seen everything. So whatever you're going to try, Trevor Harris is going to figure it out. He's been able to adapt to, 6 right tackles this season they've had to start. I think Saskatchewan has. So I think Saskatchewan's takes this one. Great to see Vernon get a shot again because BC needed a jump, and he certainly helped give it to them. But yeah, Saskatchewan, the playoffs, I just think it's a different story.
As far as the East goes, listen, I think Toronto's going to be a big favorite in this game. Ottawa has looked, listen, they haven't looked like they're in the caliber of Toronto or Montreal over the last little while. Do you give the Red Blacks any hope? And as of right now, if you had to call a team to be in Vancouver representing the East, is it still Montreal, who's been the number one team all year, or is it the Argos, who have certainly looked a lot better in recent games with Chad Kelly back and a defense that makes you pay for every yard you get?
Yeah, in the pregame show on OB, I said Toronto was the team that I absolutely feared the most, and I meant it. Like they look good, and they have room to grow in my mind, and they beat Montreal in their most recent meeting. Watching Montreal in that game kind of tipped me a little bit in their favor because Montreal is solid. They're healthy. They have a little bit of everything. Beverette's out there killing people. They can cover everybody. That Ento Ruffin combo on the field side. Hi, Penny. Yes, we're on Hustler's show. She's very excited
Penny,
to meet you.
People lose their minds when you bring a dog on. Feel free to show Penny off a little bit.
I wish she wasn't, but here she is. This is and yeah, Penny's a real hugger, and she's gonna start licking me in a sec. So that's gonna be a thing. So there we are. Thanks, Penny. She just every 30 minutes or so she needs some love because her mom is upstairs ignoring her while she works. So we get through it. Yeah, I started to believe a little more in Montreal having seen them because, like I mentioned, their record isn't good the last little bit. Their play hasn't been good. Getting squashed by BC was kind of a shocker. So I would say Toronto's going to be a dog when they go to the East Final, but I'm rolling on Toronto. I really think they still have room to grow, and I think Toronto's the team to beat in the East by a small margin.
Well, there's still work to be done for the Bombers in that West Final. We'll find out who comes next week based on the game in Saskatchewan. But I'm sort of with you, and I would love for the Bombers to get another crack at Toronto. I mean, they owe them one from the Grey Cup. They owe them a couple from this season, and tough to beat a team 3 times in a year. Although that is what the Bombers are going to have to be able to do to get there, whether it's Toronto, whether it's BC, or whether it's Saskatchewan coming up. I would imagine that last night you guys were probably preempted by the hockey game. So is it Coach's Show tonight?
Coach's Show tonight, 7 to 8 on 680 CJOB. We're going to run through some of those decisions. I'm curious to hear what Mike O'Shea would have told his returner in that spot, because I got sent that same recommendation of let that ball bounce into the end zone, take it at the 40, and then if you shank a punt, you get the Bombers have the ball at there. I think it is 39, which is a different deal than what they had. Why did O'Shea down 20 to 9? Why did he kick a field goal? 20 to 18. Why did he kick a convert instead of going for 2? I love that decision, though I'm a big go for 2 guy. I think he does the right thing there. All sorts of interesting little decisions along the way as to why Osh did what he did and what would he have done in some Montreal circumstances. I love talking to him about that stuff because that stuff really fascinates me. And I think as fans, we can really go, what are you doing? I love the what are you doing conversations that we can have. So, 7 to 8 texts and calls. We'll talk about wind gusts and how much Osh knew in advance when he chose the wind in the fourth quarter. If he has any hotline connections to Mother Nature or Environment Canada.
Well, you know what? It's funny you say that. I always think back to our coach, Paul Normando at Kelvin in high school. He always talked about getting the wind in the fourth quarter. There are some coaches that live by that, and it certainly helped out, and a little divine intervention didn't hurt. And by the way, the discourse with you and Doug on the 2-point conversations throughout the broadcast was awesome. But listen, you guys really did. It was just an awesome broadcast and a game that I won't forget, and I think Bomber fans won't forget for a long, long time. A big extra week of extra rest for the Bombers, and they'll get ready to take on the winner of Saturday's West Semi at Mosaic. DT, enjoy the Coaches Show tonight. We'll be listening with Coach Mike O'Shea over on 680 CJOB at 6:30. Thanks so much for doing this, and we'll talk to you soon. Hopefully in Vancouver in a couple weeks as well.
I would like that a lot, my friend. Thank you.
Appreciate it. There's DT. You can follow him on X at DT on OB. There's Derek Taylor. And hey, a big cheers to our friends at Little Brown Jug, who are going to be teaming up with us in Boston Pizza for a big one tomorrow night.
You train day in and day out, learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
All right, yes, and Little Brown Jug is now available at select Boston Pizzas on tap. And one of those BPs is Boston Pizza Polo Park, where we are doing a WST watch party tomorrow. Our friends at Little Brown Jug have put together some prizes. We'll do some Jets trivia, some fun games for everybody. And of course, at Boston Pizza, spinning the wheel, pick a player contest. Great win. You can win BP food, swag from Royal Sports. So listen, we'd love to see you tomorrow. Grab your crew and join us tomorrow. I'd recommend getting there early to reserve your spot, or if you are looking for a bigger group at the table, you can give Boston Pizza Polo Park a call and reserve it. Myself, Connor, Liz, Remis, the whole gang will be there, and hopefully starting a new streak tomorrow night against the Detroit Red Wings. Again, puck drop at 6:30. Looking forward to seeing you all at Boston Pizza Polo Park for the game. And, you know, in addition to everything going on at BP for Jet games all year long, you'll also have your chance to qualify to win that grand prize that they're giving away, sending a couple fans out to Boston with airfare, deluxe hotel, tickets to see the Jets and Bruins, and Boston Pizza's also throwing in tickets for the Celtics and the Bulls tomorrow night. Going to be an incredible grand prize later on this year. So join us tomorrow at BP Polo Park. And BP all season long is your place to win great prizes and watch the Winnipeg Jets do their thing. I got to shout out Royal Sports and, of course, Royal Swag. Of course, BP, for all their Jets promos, is getting their stuff from Royal Sports. Because if you are a Jets fan or want to pick something up for a Jets fan, you won't find anywhere with a more massive selection of gear for the local team than Royal Sports. All the hats, all the hoodies, all the toques, jerseys, customized with your favorite player, name and number. They've got it all. Also, a great selection of Bomber merch, and maybe we'll need something a little warmer for the game on November 9th at Princess Auto Stadium. They've got you covered there. The biggest selection of NHL gear in town, NFL, they've got it all. And of course, for over 40 years, the #1 hockey superstore in town with literally everything you need to drop the puck on another season, from full equipment right down to pucks, stick tape, and skate sharpening. Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway. Check them out on Instagram as well, at Royal Sports Winnipeg, for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. And hey, one quick note, and I know we mentioned that, you know, we've got this watch party tomorrow, and then, of course, a big homestand next week where the Jets are home for 4, beginning against Tampa on Sunday, then Utah, Colorado, and Dallas on that big doubleheader on November 19th. Jets then hit the road they come back for our next WST game. We had a great time at the Pittsburgh game for our first Winnipeg Sports Talk game of the month. November's game is the 19th against Paul Maurice and the Florida Panthers. Go to winnipegjets.com/WST. Grab your tickets with us in section 316. All your tickets will be loaded into your Jets 360 app, including a beverage voucher. And it'll be a great time. So yes, November 19th, our first game. When you go to the link, you'll see the other 4 games. We've got that fun. The December one should be really fun against Minnesota on the 21st, a Saturday night leading into Christmas. Be a little WST holiday party. I hope you can join us. We've got the Seattle game in January, Friday night with the Islanders in February, and then the final game March 28th, Friday night against the New Jersey Devils. So had such a great time with the package last year. We're looking to do it bigger and better and, kind of make people maybe a little bit more accessible. If you weren't able to commit to the 4 games right off the bat, join us for the game of the month. The next one is November 19th against the Florida Panthers. Link in the description. Get your crew. Early doors, pop in with us. We'll set up shop in the bar in section 316 as we always do, and hopefully get ready to see another win. It was nice to start 1-0 this season, unlike our start last year. All right, let's get Remo back in here. Remo, I didn't get a chance to talk to you yesterday, obviously not being on the show about that Bomber game, but truly, an all-timer, and the discourse online afterwards was just hilarious. Like it seemed basically almost unbelievable, but it happened.
Yeah, you're watching him kick the 61, and you're like, all right, I guess this is it, and it's short, and you're getting ready to bundle up for this weekend at IG Field. But hey, it's not over, and while they were trailing, I kept saying, oh, there's time, and they needed all of it. It went down to 0 seconds. When he shaked, I couldn't even see. I watched it so many times, Huss. I still don't know where the ball went on that punt by Zima at the end with the wind. It was just such a crazy scene. All of a sudden, you see leaves on the broadcast. It was so crazy, and I haven't seen a graph or anything of win probability, but I imagine the Bombers' win probability went from they're have a chance here to almost nothing, and then all of a sudden, they're closer when they miss the field goal. It was just such a wild swing of emotions in a game where, honestly, as it gave me a lot of flashbacks to the Grey Cup, just how Montreal was able to move the ball, get big plays, convert second downs, and the Bombers, they're able to move the ball well, but when they got into the scoring zones, they weren't able to put it into the end zone. It was, I was yelling at the TV. Oh, I don't know what it is, maybe because you and I are going to the Grey Cup, and I really want the Bombers to be there while we're there. I think it would be, obviously great for the show here, but it was certainly a classic and a finish that we won't won't stop talking about for a long time, especially if they win.
Oh, well, I was there. I'm just sitting there listening to this, and the 61-yarder doesn't happen. I'm like, oh my God, I cannot believe you're going to lose this game to Montreal. And then, I had zero doubt that Saskatchewan would have steamrolled Calgary if they actually had to put their big guys out there. But they shut it down. Now they got to play BC again, which should be a really, really intriguing game. Tomorrow we'll be all into the aftermath of the final week of the regular season and the first week of the playoffs on CFL 110 at around 3:15 tomorrow afternoon, right after Winnipeg Sports Talk. All right, let's get over to the Coolbet lines. It's actually a pretty busy night in the National Hockey League. It was a very busy Monday yesterday. But before we even get to the lines, tonight, number 3, our third poker tourney with Coolbet, the Lock Shop, Winnipeg Sports Talk, and Edmonton Sports Talk. $100 bounties on the head of myself and Dustin. I believe Remis as well, and Matthew Iwanek. Listen, we had so much fun these last couple times. If you missed it, join us tonight for it. We're going to be getting going 9 p.m. tonight. And as you can see, Remis says the Lock Shop Poker Series, just right up at the top. You just click on poker and then download the poker app onto your computer. That's what I've done, the easiest way to do it. It's a great platform for it. And then click on tournaments. There's a little magnifying glass. If you click on that and just put in lock, it'll come up. And again, it's 20 euros, which is $30. And there's a bonus, as I said, for taking us out. So let's go. There you have it. Bounty prizes on Dustin, Hustler, Matawanek, and Michael Remis. So you can try and take us out, win some money, and have a great time playing it tonight. Lock Shop Tourney number 3. And I am the holder of the belt amongst the WST and EST. Remis had it for the first time. And Remis, actually, it's on us. The one thing I definitely want is for either you or me to be the last man standing, and we can continue to hold this over our friends at Edmonton Sports Talk, that they are no match for WST Brain Trust when it comes to the poker tourneys.
Yeah, well, the Jets beat, the Oilers earlier this season, the Bombers stomp all over the Elks. I mean, everyone does, but, and of course, WST over EST in the Lock Shop Poker Series. I felt the pressure last time with the bounty. I think I'm adjusted, hoping for a good one. I got out on some, I don't say it was a bad beat. I didn't play that well, but hopefully it's a better showing for me tonight, 9 p.m.
9 p.m. So join us. And as I say, it's a really friendly, simple platform or manifest. I mean, if you've ever done any online poker, it'd be very simple for you to join, learn, and come and hang out with us. So let's do that tonight. All right. While we're at it, let's check out all these games for tonight. Flyers at Boston. Boston minus 159 favorites. Philly plus 135. The Kraken are in Montreal on a 3-game losing streak. The Habs playing pretty well lately, actually. Plus 148 for Montreal as the home dog. We've got the Ducks and the Islanders. Islanders are a big minus 250 favorite. Ottawa back at home after their road trip. Linus Ullmark back in net. Minus 175 for the Sens against the St. Louis Blues. The Wild minus 120 road favorites against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Marc-Andre Fleury's final visit to Pittsburgh in his career. The Rangers minus 151 favorites on the road in Washington to take on the Caps. And no surprise, even though they got their first win last night, the San Jose Sharks, a massive home dog, plus 240. LA Kings minus 294. Let's just see here. We did put together a little partner parlay for tonight. And I actually like the number on the Canadians. As a home dog, Montembeau's starting. It looks like Grubauer's going to go for the Kraken. I think Decord's their number one guy there. So we've got Montreal. We've got the Wild getting Fleury a win in his final game against Pittsburgh and the New York Rangers. And that one's got a nice boost on it. It was plus 655. It's up to plus 746. So that's there. We've got the apple picking season. Who do we got tonight? Kaprizov, Tkachuk, and Nick Suzuki for assists. That one's been hitting big time lately. And Patty's got one as well. What is he? He's got a Michkov point, a Kyrou point, and a Kaprizov point. That's boosted to plus 300. World Series, Reem. Is it over tonight?
Yeah.
Well, the Dodgers plus 118 to complete the sweep. Yankees minus 139. Disappointing for the Yankees. I mean, listen, I don't really have any skin in the game. I'm a big Ohtani fan, so I guess I was sort of cheering for the Dodgers. I certainly didn't want this series to be a sweep, though, after how good the playoffs have been. But Yankees down to their final out. Aaron Judge has just been invisible, really all playoffs, but especially this series. And not even that incredible performance from Fat Joe before the game could get the Yankees off to a good start. And it's do or die tonight for New York.
Yeah, I see Ashanti is going to be singing the anthem. And the Dodgers, really? I looked at the line yesterday. I'm like, the Dodgers, as an underdog, I guess you would kind of have to take them anytime, right? Just how good their lineup is, and their big hitters are out-hitting the Yankees hitters. Freddie Freeman, I don't know what the odds are, but I imagine he'd be the favorite for MVP at this time. And the MVP numbers, I looked on Friday before the start. I mean, it was kind of Ohtani was huge favorite, but there are so many good players that had, good plus numbers. So I thought that was really interesting from a betting perspective. But anything can happen. These are both really good lineups, but yeah, the Yankees, they need Aaron Judge to step up and make himself known in this series, and it hasn't happened yet. And, Freddie Freeman, big homer yesterday, big homer in game 1. This Dodgers lineup is just, it's pretty disgusting.
The Grand Slam in game 1 was so legendary. I think, how is it not Freddie Freeman? Especially if it ends tonight. Because that will be looked at the moment of the entire World Series. How about those Pittsburgh Steelers, by the way? Yeah. Russie and the Steel. They beat the Giants last night to get to 6-2. And, we were talking about this earlier today, and we'll do a little more NFL later on this week. But, Reem, the New York Jets have scored, I think, 2 less points or 2 more points, basically the exact same amount of points that they did last year with Zach Wilson as their quarterback. And right now, they have the same record as the Patriots, the Cleveland Browns, the Jags, the Raiders, and the New York Giants. And not to mention the Saints, who have lost 6 in a row. This has to be one of the most disappointing campaigns we've seen in recent NFL history for the Jets, who've already fired their coach and now coming off a loss to the lowly Pats.
Yeah, it's, you hate to see it, right, Huss? It's gone an interesting season for them, firing the coach, bringing in all Aaron Rodgers' friends, and it just hasn't worked out at all, losing to the Patriots. They're still favorites against the Texans, which is interesting because you look at the records, us and the Texans do have a much better one than the Patriots. So we'll see how it goes. The odds makers still like the Jets, although it's been very, very
insane,
disappointing. Yeah.
Now, I guess Diggs is out. Nico Collins is out. So there is some questions. But, the Jets have just been – they've stunk. There's no other way to put it. All the NFL lines are out, though, for the week beginning. And, man, I had a good time. That stadium, dude, in Vegas, absolutely world class. Did you see much of that KC Raider game on TV?
No, I wasn't tracking that one. I was,
but did you see it at all? Did you see the stadium and how it looked?
I've seen,
as far as the crowd.
Oh, was it all? It was obviously all red jerseys, right?
Dude, it was crazy. It was crazy. It did. I will say this. For me, it sort of did feel like a road game still because I somehow was in the one section, which was just about all Raider fans. But I've got some pictures. I'll post this afterwards. I haven't really had a chance to go through all them all. Looking out, it didn't look a lot different than Arrowhead on a regular Sunday. The Chiefs fans travel big time, and listen, going to Vegas to see your team play in the NFL is such a cool experience. Obviously, I don't need to explain people why Vegas is a fun place to go. But with that stadium, amazing tailgate beforehand, and you will love this, Reem. So they have this Modelo tailgate. You get dropped off, and before you go into the stadium, you go through this area. They've got beers, they've got food trucks, they've got a bunch of kind of slips or whatever that shade people from the sun, and massive screens with Red Zone going on. So we got basically a chance to just catch up and watch all the early games as they were happening before heading in and seeing the game. And the only way that weekend could have been better was if the Chiefs didn't give up that late touchdown for the backdoor cover by the Raiders. But other than that, 7-0. The Bombers win. The Jets won on the weekend. I would have liked to press my luck into last night, but overall, it's been a pretty good run. The only way this run could get better would be a victory tonight in the Lock Shop Poker Series before a fun day tomorrow at Boston Pizza with all of our WST friends seeing the Jets start another winning streak.
Yeah, I'm pumped for this poker tournament tonight. Very excited for this watch party tomorrow at Boston Pizza. It seems like we're doing a lot of events here with the game of the month, a couple weeks ago for the Brian Little game, and coming up for the Florida Panthers. Paul Maurice coming back to Winnipeg as a Stanley Cup champion. So, hey, looking forward to seeing everyone. A couple before we wrap up, I just want to mention last night's Amazon Prime broadcast. I did get a chance to take it in at home, watch it on a tablet, watch it on the built-in app on my TV. For me, no issues. Picture very, very crystal clear, maybe even clearer than the regular national broadcast. Sound very strong. Like the panel and broadcast team, I thought it was very well done. And for the pregame show, it starts about an hour before scheduled. They scheduled for 6:30. I think 5:30 they start broadcasting just inside the arena. You get a feel of the sights and the sounds of people coming in. It's a nice change, Huss. And I know there are some people maybe did not have that experience. There was some sound glitching at times, which strangely I didn't experience, but I saw videos online of dial-up modem sounds, and there's some accessibility concerns as well. But overall, I've enjoyed what Prime has brought, and people are asking why is this game on Prime? Well, they paid the money for it. Rogers sold them the Monday night game, and I imagine when the rights are up after next season, there's going to be more games on Prime, and they have the Thursday show as well, which I think is well done. So there's only 4 Jets games this year. I mean, you could have got the free trial and canceled it right after if you really wanted to. So we'll see. The next one is December, I think, here against Nashville. And it was cool. I thought that they had the panel in the basement there at the Premium Lounge.
Well, by the way, yes. I wish I'd known that they were going to be down there in the lounge. That was the one thing I was thinking, like where they were going to set them up, just because our concourse isn't big enough really to have that sort of setup. It would have created some insane bottlenecks. So when they had them in there, and I'll tell you what, if I was laying a Coolbet line, it would have been about minus 1,000 that Carter Chen would have shown up on the screen behind it. Of course he did. And listen, Carter's a good friend, and he did like an interview, I don't know if you saw in his story, with Adnan Virk. I guess he was a big court surfing guy. Tim McAuliffe posted it as well. So it was great. Listen, everything seemed awesome last night except for the start for the Jets and the end of the score, and the final score. But hey, 8-1, you move on, learn some lessons, and hopefully be better tomorrow night against the Wings. And of course, we'll come up with a big performance because the WST crew is going to be at Boston Pizza Polo Park. I hope you can join us. No admission, no tickets. Just come down, enjoy the game, have a few 1919, some pizza, and hopefully win some nice prizes and start another streak.
Here, before we go, I also wanted to mention, we didn't even touch on this, the Jets wearing white at home. No, I think Mike in the Free Press wrote no real reason given. Maybe Toronto said, we want to wear our black jerseys, and Jets said, sure. I don't mind. I didn't mind. Like, didn't really bother me. I don't know, people had opinions on them wearing. I would like to see them bring the white heritage if they're going to do that. But
yeah, those ones are that's not really an active jersey.
It's not an
right
active jersey. Yeah, it should be. I think it should be. It's a beautiful jersey. But it was interesting that they wore white at home. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Vegas, with the Ottawa game that I was at on Friday, Vegas wore white and the Sens were wearing their blacks. I'm not really sure why that was. I didn't ask Gary. By the way, Gary sends his best to everybody. Had quite the evening with him. I'm just going to tell you guys this right now. The Gary Lawless operation in Las Vegas now. Gary, listen, being a business partner for a long time, he was always a guy that knew how to do a deal. And he was definitely, and this is the ultimate city where you do a favor for someone and they do a favor for you. I have to thank Gary. He took me for legit, probably the nicest dinner I have ever been to in my life, at some bougie, very exclusive Italian restaurant called Carbone in area. I would highly recommend it. I think it takes months to get a reservation. And we roll into this place, Reem. There's like 40 or 50 people outside the restaurant, just in, I think, checking it out, wondering if there's any chance to get in. The answer to that was no. There was another 40 people or so sort of inside the doors waiting for their reservation. Lawless walks in, and I'm sort of kind of behind him thinking, he's going to probably have to check in. Well, of course, the lady that runs the restaurant, "Oh, Gary, hi. arms around them. Us, come on in here. They roll us right up, and like for the next 2.5 hours, just kept on bringing us the most unbelievable food I've had. I think there was probably 4 different wines. There was champagne. The shrimp cocktail, I swear to God, the shrimp were like this big. It was quite the culinary treat, and he's got some good hookups, and I'll tell you what, it was appreciated by me, but they were just happy to have Gary in, and listen, I mean, we're lucky. I mean, I go to the games a lot and get a lot of props from people for doing what we're doing every day, and a lot of people recognize it's the same thing with the lawman now, especially getting him as much TV time as he does. So, anyways, it was fun to get out to the games. Had a great time at the dinner, but he did say give everyone a shout out back here in the Peg, and he'll be back here at time. But made it back. I'm feeling actually now just about getting back to normal. I'll be ready to go for the poker tourney tonight, and I will definitely be ready to go for tomorrow and the watch party at Boston Pizza Polo Park for the Jets and the Red Wings. Good stuff today, Reem. Thanks again for you and Connor holding it down for the last couple days while I was away, and I'm looking forward to getting the entire crew together with so many of our listeners and viewers tomorrow for the hockey game. But in the meantime, 9 o'clock tonight, the poker tourney. Hopefully you can join us. Again, coolbet.com. Click on poker, download the poker app, click on tournaments, and then just search Lock, and it'll pop up the Lock Shop Poker Open. We get going at 9 p.m. tonight. Thanks again to all the sponsors that make the show happen each and every day, and all of you for hanging out with us. I know there's a few people that probably didn't want to listen to a breakdown of a Leaf win over the Jets, but we do what we got to do. Very fun conversation with DT about the Bombers, though. And, of course, tomorrow, CFL 110 after the show, around 3:15 tomorrow. Make sure to stick around for that. That's going to do it for us. For Michael Remis, I'm Andrew Pasterson. Have a great one. Hopefully we'll see you on the poker tourney tonight. If not, tomorrow, 1 p.m. live on YouTube. And then 6:30 puck drop at Boston Pizza Polo Park. Have a great one, everyone. See you tomorrow.
Oh, my God. Oh! Shut it down. Let's go home.
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.